What's up, everybody? Precarious situation going on here. Let me know about the microphone. I'm using a different one than normal, so just let me know if y'all can hear me. I'll give it a minute for people to filter in here, but basically, we've talked about this a little bit on some of the breakdown pairs here recently, but I wanted to do a little bit more in-depth thing. I wrote an article for my Patreon crowd a couple of weeks ago, and a few people have asked me if I was going to share it publicly or if I would share it publicly or whatever else. And so we're just going to talk through, we're basically just going to talk through the article, because this is a little bit beyond just how people feel about string pins or two-handers or whatever else. There's some bigger, more simple, just baseline factors that people don't think about, aren't considering, whatever else. And it's kind of got to the point, like I put in the description here, it's kind of got to the point where, you know, if you can't get angry about something, then you don't really care about it. And, you know, being happy, and I've talked about this a million times, I've said this before, but just to reiterate where we're going from, there's such a thing as toxic positivity, where people are being happy and thinking positive thoughts, but at the same time, you still have to be realistic and not to make light of any situation at all. But if somebody there's a difference, you know, if somebody has cancer, you can be both very positive and optimistic and putting on a good face, but you still have to go to the doctor. You still have to go to your treatments. You still have to take it very seriously. You can be positive about the outcome, but you still have to be very honest and positive. You can't just kind of, think happy thoughts. We got to smile and be positive because bowling needs positivity. Bowling needs something to be positive about, is the thing. Oh boy. James dropping in a dad joke here when we're trying to be serious. But like Stu Williams, I am also here for the super chats. And this mouse is just far enough away. Yeah, what did Yoda ride when he was a kid? A do cycle because there is no try. A do cycle because there is no try. Yeah, all right. So yeah, a little bit of levity to get started with. Let's get this nonsense out of here. But again, I am here for the super chats. If you do have something to say, I am again definitely here for the super chats. I'm not going to turn down one of those. I had many agreements and a few disagreements with the article, and that's great, Rusty. If you want to comment those, because this is I don't know everything. I have certain angles and certain perspectives, and this is where debate needs to happen instead of bowlers just kind of ganging up on each other and getting all hateful and nasty. And I may not have the best perspective on something. Somebody else may have a better perspective or another angle or something like that. So that's the point of having a discussion. I will put my thoughts and my opinions, I guess, or my conclusions out there, but my conclusions could be wrong. And if I get more information, it could help me see things a little bit differently. So I'm not putting anything out there like this is gospel or like I know everything or know more than anybody else. Yeah, you're just sick of being a lefty, so it colors your opinion. I am actually sick of being a lefty. And I will not debate that. You forgot, so I'm hoping you go through it. Yeah, I'm gonna read the whole thing, Rusty. So we'll circle back around. So I'm gonna have a little bit of the good stuff. I'm gonna have some top shelf here while we're talking about this. This is from this stupid mouse. It's just too far away. Always happens like this. Have a little Johnny Walker Blue Label. This is out of the special Johnny Walker. This is actually the best way to buy Blue Label because a bottle of Blue Label is $2.50. But if you buy this Johnny Walker pack for $80, you get a 200 milliliter bottle of this stuff as part of the 4-pack. So you could if you bought 4 of those, or 3 of them anyway, you can end up with almost a full bottle of Blue Label.
Can you hand me the dog pillow? Maybe
Plus
lay on
with,
that.
yeah, I'm gonna move a dog. What are you doing, Buck?
Here, strap.
You gotta move, Buck. All right, dog pillow, Blue Label. Ooh, that's good stuff. All right, everybody that's in here that's gonna be in here, killing time, losing time for all the people watching later. So we're basically gonna go top to bottom of this article. It's a fairly long article, but I mean, duh. But I really don't think the bowling is going to last. Competitive bowling is going to last much longer than unless something changes. Competitive bowling doesn't have much more than 10 or 15 years left in it for just some very basic, simple reasons, in my opinion. So let's go ahead and go through it. Over the last couple of years, I've become increasingly disenchanted with bowling to the point that I could quit tomorrow and not only miss it, but be relieved that it's gone. And does anyone care about a ball reviewer disappearing? No, but that's not the point. I spent the vast majority of the last 2 decades heavily involved in the sport in one way or another. Starting at the local level, I got into a pro shop part time early in 2000s and continued doing that for several years. I eventually managed that shop for a few years. I was also very heavily involved in league bowling. I was a director on our local area association board for over a decade. And along with my wife, we managed the annual lane inspection program for a handful of years. We also ran a number of tournaments, from smaller sweeper types to charity events to helping with city tournaments and running brackets for bigger local tournaments. Most people, of course, are going to know me from the YouTube channel. I've uploaded over 1,700 videos now over the last decade plus. I started early in 2015. And yes, I know it's 2015 to 2024. This is year number 10. Now, while I catch the ball reviewer label just because, I've tried to establish my presence as a tech and information-based online pro shop resource. That's what that's the fancy, one of those fancy, cash register technicians, or one of those fancy titles for checking people out at the cash register. But that's the angle that I've always tried to take. And one thing that drives me nuts is that I understand that so I don't see ball reviewing being a whole lot different from being in a pro shop, except I'm not trying to sell you anything. It doesn't matter to me whether you buy the balls in my video or not, because I don't gain anything from any of it. Pro shops actually have something to gain. When you go into a pro shop, they're hoping that you buy something. I don't care. I'm making videos trying to help people figure out what to buy, not talk you into buying anything, because it doesn't do anything for me. And there are bad pro shops out there, just like there are bad ball reviewers. But everybody kind of looks at pro shop work as a noble thing, but ball reviewers are just shills and, hype machines and whatever else. And I've never operated from that particular angle. Again, it's all about getting people information. And I've had a lot of pro shop people tell me that they will put my videos on in the pro shop. And that's kind of the idea. That's where I started in the first place, is that people said that they had a hard time. It's like, well, I'm interested in this ball, but all I can see is 500 rev rates on YouTube. It's set to rock music. I can't tell what's going on. We had a TV in the pro shop, which was kind of a rare thing 10 years ago. I mean, it doesn't sound like it should be, but there's not a whole lot of pro shops with TVs in them 10 years ago. We had one set up, and so if somebody was interested in a ball, I made a video for it, for the ones that I drilled, and I could plop it up on the screen and have everybody look at it. And it was that's the point. That's the point, is helping people figure out what they need to buy. And as long as as long as equipment is such a heavy, prominent thing in the bowling game, and it doesn't matter how much of a purist you are, whether you just bowl on sport patterns, whatever else, you're going to be using reactive equipment at some point or another, especially if you're more competitive. Even if you only bowl sport leagues, you're going to have to buy equipment at some point. And it would be helpful for you to be able to see what the equipment does so that you can make a better, more informed decision. That's the point. That's what that should be the whole thing. But somehow or another, the ball reviewers got this awful label, and I understand some of it. But pro shops, even the awful ones that have no clue what they're doing, won't get your positive access points, don't know anything about. There's people that don't know anything about layouts either. It's just like they put stack. There's still pro shops out there that just stack leverage everything. They don't get positive access points. They don't have any idea about cover stocks. They barely understand what cores do. They just, oh, well, this will be fine, and we'll just put the fingers here because that's how I used to do it 30 years ago. They just kind of do that number, and meanwhile, yes, you do have a lot of staffers out there that are trying that. I don't know where they got the idea that they had to make the equipment look good. I guess they think that they got to keep their contract or something. So they got to make the equipment look good so that you keep buying it, but it doesn't. There's no direct. And the company is like, okay, well, promotion's great, but we have no idea how much good this actually does for us. Whether it does any good or not, it's like, I mean, it's cool that you're putting it out there, but I mean, I don't really know. Let me catch up with before we continue with the article here, I will catch up with the comments. Yeah, toxic positivity. My house burns down. My neighbor says, smile, your lawn still looks good. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. This is one of those things where you've got to have the positive people. You've got to have your Verity Crawleys that make you want to bowl. She's happy, positive about everything, but she's looking at it through a much different lens. She's in a different situation. She's in a different position. She's one of the faces of the sport, and people like that, you want to be very, very positive, setting a good example, whatever, showing how much fun bowling can be, so showing what it should be like at the top levels of the sport. But then you have your Gordon Ramsays of the world that, I mean, everybody loves him, but he goes in there and he just absolutely eviscerates people when he gets in there. But people absolutely love him for it. The thing is, though, that people like that, if you just go in there and you're all nice and happy, if you're going into something that's failing and you're all nice and happy and chipper and whatever else, if you can't get some kind of emotional response out of the people that you're trying to help, if you just go in there and, oh yeah, we need to work on this, and but it's okay, we can dig you out of this. If you go in there and just kind of trot through everything and kind of set people up and leave, there's no emotional response there for them to do anything with. But if you go in there and you get up their ass and you piss them off, you're going to find out, okay, if you can piss them off, if you can make somebody angry about something, that means that they care about something. Then you can take that anger and redirect it. But if you can't make somebody angry about something, then they really don't care about it. And so there's not going to be any kind of a change that happens there. If you can't get some kind of an emotional response out of somebody, nothing's going to change. And it might even show some people that's like, okay, well, wow, I didn't realize this isn't the direction I need to go. This isn't. So if some people just don't know that, they kind of go in a certain direction and they're kind of moving their feet, but they're not really accomplishing anything. They're not really getting anywhere. And if somebody gets in their ass and they're like, oh, I don't really care. There's a difference between quitting something and redirecting something. If you're trying to get somewhere and you're driving in the opposite direction, you need to quit going the wrong direction and turn around and go in the right direction. So sometimes quitting is not quitting. And this is one of those things where we need some people in bowling to get up some people's asses, to piss them off, to make them really think about what they're doing, what directions they're going, and make them remember why they got into this in the first place. I see there's so many people in bowling that think that they're curing cancer either by making bowling balls or by, bowling is such a small, shitty little industry, and people think, again, that they're leading Fortune 500 companies or whatever, and it just doesn't make any sense, the kind of egos that people have for being in something like bowling. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm also done. The house shot killed competitive bowling. That's part of it. That is part. Too many will leave a house. I do talk about that in the article, so we'll get there in a minute. Too many will leave house if they can't drink 2 buckets and just throw the ball right for a 750 series. I think that I am okay with house shots to a certain extent, but I think that there does need to be a separation. There needs to be more enforcement of lane condition. I'll talk about this when I get there. But yeah, that's part of it. House shot and reactives, not necessarily in the way that you think, but yes, definitely. I feel that there is a desire for more competitive bowling in my area, but houses don't want to risk leagues or tournaments. And that's the thing, is part of it's a money situation, and that's a bigger situation than you think. And it's not just with the centers. I actually had a kind of a light bulb about this the other day, actually, when I was writing the article, that I just hadn't really put together before. Been watching dirt track racing, enjoy a Fremont Brewing Dark Star Imperial Style. That sounds awesome. 1,700 videos. I wonder how many balls you've reviewed. Several hundred, actually. Several hundred.
Oh, God. Don't make me go back.
Yeah, I remember when you were ITZPS. Yep, way back in the day. Seems to me like the world in general is bad right now. 20 years ago was such a better time to be alive. I do prefer, again, it's one of these. There's a lot of stuff, and I even admit it, I'm going to get called a boomer for several of these things, but it is what it is. And yeah, it's just a different, and that again is another point that I talk about further down. I think one of the reasons you got popular is that it was easy to tell you weren't a typical shill. A lot of ball reviewers are just dripping with bias. Yeah, and that's because I didn't start out I only became a staffer because I was young, and people just in the bowling world, unless you're like 50 years old in a pro shop, people just don't think that you know anything or have any idea what you're doing. But people still kind of respected staffers 10, 15 years ago. And so if you were young, but you were a staffer, it's like, oh, okay, well, if you're on staff, then that must mean that you know what you're doing or you're good at it or whatever else. And so we'll overlook the age thing. So that was mostly the thing. Sure, it was fun to get on staff, but I don't really think it means much anymore. So, shot league in the fall. I'm just a whatever is cheapest simp, though that usually means I'm buying 2+ year olds used equipment. Yeah. Friendly reminder to like the video. Bob, yeah, we'll go ahead and put Bob's up. I wish that thanks for the super chat, Bob. I wish it would notify me up there. The problem in my hometown is growing up, we had 2 houses in town. Both are gone. No one's going to invest in a center that has to be built ground up. That's the other thing. Unless you do a family fun center where you have go-karts and a big arcade and other stuff, a traditional bowling center by itself is just not going to survive outside of some limited exceptions. And again, there's a big part of it that doesn't really have anything to do with centers. That's interesting. If there's one insult I remember, it's Sean Rash in the water bottle. Yeah, it's hard to separate the ball footage from the reviewer rhetoric. I've been bowling about a year now, and I unsubbed a lot of bowling channels because every new ball is the best. And this is the thing. I make fun of this all the time is every ball is this the best new ball out, or is this the ball that we've been waiting for, or this ball is going to be a staple in my bag, or this ball is a must-have. It's like, well, if every single ball is that and they keep coming out with all kinds of them, I mean, I can only take – you still look like an idiot walking in with 6 balls to league. And on our mixed league this year, I'm taking 2 balls. I'm taking a spare ball and one other ball, and that one other ball is going to be the same ball for the entire length of the thing. Because even if I have stuff I want, even if I take things that I want to, I have stuff I just want to throw, but at the same time, I don't want to lug in 6 bowling balls to a Friday night drinking mixed league. I just don't. I'm going to take 2 balls, and that's going to be it. And I'm probably still going to do just fine, because it doesn't really matter what you score on a house shot anyway. But there is a caveat to that. Again, I get there, and I don't want to insult anybody. Revolt against Chad in the USBC. Yeah, before we go too deep into competitive bowling, I can't remember if it's in there. What defines competitive bowling? Scratch, big money? Competitive bowling is just anything that's really not recreational. Anything above, like if you get into a league and you are a USBC member, technically that's kind of competitive bowling. Even if it's a mixed league, it is league bowling, tournament bowling, whatever else. That's kind of what separates people from. Once you get into league bowling, then you're in the competitive side of the sport rather than the recreational. And there's a lot of people who think, well, leagues are recreational. And yes, they kind of are, but there's a very big split in money and revenue versus whether you're in a league bowling tournaments or whether you are an open play bowler.
I would say when it's not everybody gets a trophy, because like scratch league versus the mixed league, how they water down the prize fund so far.
Yeah.
Competitive to me would be when you cross that, not everybody gets a award.
Yeah, competitive bowling would be when you get.
And there's actual losers.
Yeah, when you when you don't just have a super flat prize fund where nobody really wins or loses any money. But yeah, the competitive side of the sport, if you were in a league, there's a very stark difference in revenue generated for the center and how you are going to be as a consumer versus if you're bowling leagues and tournaments or if you're an open play bowler. It's completely different. There's two very, very different things. I wish ball companies weren't as active in the sport as they are, to be honest. This is a blessing and a curse right now, but this is one of the big things that once we hit the point that I'm getting to, it's kind of sobering. Late, but here, let the complaints commence. That's what I've always enjoyed about your videos: lack of bias and just your honest opinion, along with plenty of knowledge. And this is the thing, I don't know everything. Sometimes I get bad reads on bowling balls, but that's why I do the report cards too, to hopefully come back and see what's up. But again, I don't have any. I gain nothing. I want you to watch the video. Beyond that, I don't care. It doesn't do anything for me. I just want you to watch and enjoy the videos. And again, if you are on the competitive side, if you bowl leagues, tournaments, whatever else, you're going to be buying bowling balls to participate in the sport. It has nothing to do with hyping stuff up and, oh, this is cool. And you want it to be fun. You want people to get a bowling ball that works out for them so that they have more fun bowling. And if they have more fun bowling, they're going to bowl more often. I don't want to talk somebody into something just to have them hate it and go, okay, well, screw these ball reviewers, screw these pro shops. I'm just going to go find something else to do. I want people to enjoy bowling. And if people spend their money better, they don't spend as much or they don't dump as much into bad bowling balls or into bowling balls that don't work out for them. And if they don't waste a whole bunch of money on bowling balls, they have more money to actually bowl. So if people would actually stop and think about this for a second, it's a whole different story than what's actually going on. I think the best ball thing is most irritating with the lightning blackout. It makes no sense to be more expensive than the road, but the reviewers make it sound good. This is one of those things where it looks like a decent bowling ball. But when you can buy a virtual energy blackout for the same price as a lightning blackout, and the lightning blackout is in road performance line territory, why not just buy a Vibo? It's one of those things that's like, oh, you may not want that much hook. And it's like, okay, well, I can get something that hooks like a lightning blackout for $50 cheaper. So why? Yeah, one reviewer who was guilty of more so than others made a video saying the lightning blackout was the ball for the fresh, to later making a video saying the LBO is the best transition ball. And this is the thing. I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating for people like me because then I get lumped in with a demographic or with a group that I don't really want to be lumped in with. It's one of those things where there's like a lot of Christians out there too that they're not embarrassed of saying I believe in God or I believe in Jesus or whatever else. They're embarrassed of other Christians because as soon as you say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, it's like, oh, okay. all right, well, I know what the story is here. It's like, well, no, there's a big difference between religious idiots and people that actually believe in the stuff and try to live it on a daily basis. It's a completely different story. And this is one of those things where I try to be a pro shop resource, but ball reviewers out there ruin it for me. People are scared of things. Yeah, we only had 2 bowling balls for league. Yeah, that's a thing. Everybody gets money at the end. That kills me. Yeah, in mixed leagues, and this is one of those things. Prize funds in mixed leagues need to go because people complain about the price of bowling, but if they just paid lineage and forgot the prize fund that they're not going to make any money on, or they're going to put in, $200 over the course of 9 months to get back $220. But why can't leagues are $25 a week? I can't bowl more than one. It's like, well, if you didn't have this stupid prize fund crap, you could bowl 2 or 3 of them. Think about it. Yeah. Yeah, it's my standard procedure when working in the shop. I do want to take the time and get them in the right ball so that they enjoy bowling and keep doing it. That's the whole point. That's the point of. That's what the point should be. Let me put it that way. All right. I think the state of bowling differs greatly by region. Where I live, bowling is fairly healthy. We have 5 houses in the area with tons of leagues and tournaments. We live in a fairly healthy bowling region too. I mean, we've got Omaha's 3 hours away. Kansas City's close. St. Louis is close. Springfield's close. Wichita's close. We've got a really big, healthy bowling scene here. But it's not like that other places. Competitiveness is separate from the prize funds. I don't care if there's $1 million on the line or 0. I'm looking at the points and the experience of playing the sport. And that's the thing is, if you're there to drink and bowl in a mixed league, then why do you care about a prize fund? Well, and that's the thing when you get into these stupid little leagues, and the league meetings are 2 hours long because people are arguing over things. All these things that people argue over wouldn't matter if you didn't have the prize fund, and the prize fund that is there isn't worth arguing about.
We did try not to squeak. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Squeaka. We've gotten rid of some bowling balls, and so the wife is downsizing our shelves. All right. So back to the article. Again, most of the people reading, if I ever share this anywhere else, will know me from the YouTube channel. I've uploaded over 1,700 videos. I try to focus on explaining all the equipment options out there because it's confusing even for me sometimes trying to keep up with everything. I don't know everything about everything, and sometimes I really do have to rely on just, asking questions to other people, and it's like, okay, well, I haven't thrown this ball. It looks like it does this to me. You've thrown them both. What do you think? And kind of put things together that way. Because what it looks like on paper isn't always what you get at the end of the deal. Now, we've also on the channel, we've almost raised, or we're close to about $25,000 for the Positive Tails rescue. And so, it's not just ball reviews. And somebody told me, it's like, well, you were the one that wanted to be a YouTube star. It's like, if I wanted to be a YouTube star, I'd have done something else than bowling. If you want to be YouTube famous, if you're concerned with being famous in the bowling industry, number one, that's a poor life choice. And if you want to be a YouTube celebrity or something, you don't make bowling ball videos. So that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And then I've also been saying this too, but because of my position with Coolwick, I get kickbacks, the staff credit. But they let me use that credit for anything. So most companies don't do that. It's like, well, you got this and you can only specifically use it for you. And they said, no, man, it's yours to use. Coolwick encourages people to do giveaways and whatever else. And so y'all have bought so much stuff that I'm like, I'm not going to buy this much worth of jerseys. And so when the Royal Crest asked about, we want to get youth jerseys for the youth kids. How do you put us in contact with somebody or whatever else? And I'm like, man, you just tell me what you want. I'll just make it happen. And Coolwick is completely cool with that. And so, yeah,
With the help of everyone else, you want to
yeah,
be able to.
I don't buy a whole lot of stuff personally, and so we give away a lot of stuff. And then, yeah, I comp the jerseys for the youth league every year. So again, this is not, if I was in this for my own celebrity or my own whatever else, anyway. And we organize several large tournament groups for tournaments all over the country. We've got one coming up here soon where we're going to have 30-ish people from all over the country come out to the Greater KC Open in September. We just had a little group that we took to Ozarks. But anyway, I've had a very high amount of skin in the game for a very long period of time. And I literally put more time and money and effort into bowling than I do into my day job that actually pays the bills instead of creates them. The point, again, if we go back to, if I could quit tomorrow, bowling it doesn't piss me off so much anymore. That's the problem. It used to piss me off a lot. Now it's just kind of like, whatever. It's annoying. And I said, does anyone care about a ball reviewer disappearing? No, but that's not the point. The point is that if you can take somebody that fits this description, if you can take somebody that's bowled leagues and tournaments and whatever else for years, that's worked in a pro shop, that's on the local board, that's helped run tournaments, that again uses some kind of a platform to raise money for a charity, or that gives a bunch of stuff away, whatever else. If you can take somebody like that and you can completely ruin them on something that they've not only sank decades into, but significantly attached their lives to, then what chance do the FNGs, or the FN new guys, Army terms, what chance do they have at falling in love with bowling and sustaining that for any meaningful length of time? If you can take somebody that's just dumped all kinds of stuff, that bowling has been their life, if you can ruin somebody like that on bowling, what chance does anybody else have? Through the channel, I talk to thousands of people a year, and I like to think that I have one of the best ground level feels for the game out there, specifically because I talk to anyone and everyone. Like if you send me a message and I actually get the notification, I will send you a message back. And most of the time I end up having a conversation with people, because one other thing that I've always said is that every single person on the planet is better at something than you are. And so just because I know more about bowling balls, or I'm better at throwing a weird looking or a round ball, some weird looking sticks better than you, that doesn't mean there's definitely something, you're a better cook, or more about this, or you can, more about cars, or even a freaking 6-month-old that can just take a nap when they're tired instead of, being an idiot and trying to push through and making yourself sick or whatever. So there shouldn't be any kind of looking down at somebody because they're not as experienced or successful at something like bowling as you are. Break for the comments here for a minute. Let me see. Yeah, you propose no prize fund, they're going to smash your car windows. And I think I talk about this a little bit later, but yes, we literally because everybody was complaining about, again, proprietors raised lineage 25 cents and people are throwing fits. I have witnessed people that actually got to the league meeting for the year, found out the lineage went up a quarter, and they stopped bowling that night. They didn't just, I'm not going to bowl this league. They quit bowling because it just, that was their limit. That was their cutoff. It's like, as soon as lineage hits $12 a night, I'm done. And they hit their threshold and they quit over 25 cents. And yes, the first thing that happened is I brought that. I'm like, okay, well, why don't we suggest to some of these leagues that don't really put a whole bunch into the prize fund? You get maybe $100, $120 back at the end of the year. The numbers look stupid, and it just artificially inflates the cost of bowling. It just doesn't make any sense. And the first league that we suggested that to had 4 teams walk out because, well, you're raising lineage and now you're trying to take our money. It's like, no, don't understand how prize funds work, then apparently the bowling alley doesn't just, it's not added money from the bowling. You're not paying $18 a night to bowl, and then the bowling alley is refunding you like an income tax refund. You pay this much to the bowling alley, then this much goes into a prize fund, and that's all split out, and then you get most of it back at the end of the year, which most of the time there's fees. Even if a secretary doesn't operate in the league, sometimes there's still a secretary fee because of somebody that walks around and collects envelopes or whatever, because most of the centers do their own stuff now.
To make secretary stole from you.
Blue Label's expensive, but I'm a believer. Like, this is, man. So yes, and we literally had 4 people walk out, and so the bowling alley told us, it's like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. We lost 4 teams as this league because you guys suggested that. And it's not that the bowling alley, again, it's not that they didn't agree. They thought it was ridiculous too. It's just like, well, we can't have this happen. We can't lose teams. So we can't lose this many people this fast. That's one of the things I disagree with. Even though it's almost a token number, you rarely make any more money from leagues than you put in. Well, but that money is still important, or people don't take it seriously. This is, I can agree to disagree on that, or I get the point. I think you get my point, but I get your point too. It's like if people just show up to bowl, it's like, well, I want to have some kind of skin in the game. I want to have, again, that's why people play card games. So people won't play the card games unless there's $1 in the pot. It's one of those things. But how many other activities do you do, like summer softball leagues or whatever? Most softball leagues or whatever else you participate in, you just go participate in the thing to do it, and there's no money involved. Bowling is one of the very few things that I've ever done where there's money at like every single level. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Since you're not on staff, are you still going to do the fundraiser you do every year? Yep, we're still going to do the fundraiser because we still can get stuff. And there's still, again, Bowler's Mart is, Cliff always sends money, and he said, if we want to do jerseys, or I probably ought to talk to him about that actually, since it's frickin' July already. But he's like, if you guys want to do jerseys, if you want to do whatever you want to do, Bowler's Mart's down for them. We have plenty of people that do contribute to the fundraiser, and
all the prizes have always been donated, so we will still get them.
Yeah, the Angel just said a lot of the prizes have been donated, and that's one of those things, is that Storm was kind of okay if we order. They didn't want us doing a whole lot of stuff, but my staff credit was for me and me specifically, so there was no.
This is the ball for the goal this year.
Yeah, so the big, we're just as long as we're talking about it, this is the ball for the big goal, or the big money raised number. We're giving away a Crystal Physics that was donated by somebody. Josh Rowe. Crystal Physics. Oh, thanks, Buck. You dingo. Not that it really matters. Yep. What are you doing? I know.
You did it.
Huff at you. Crystal Physics. So yes, we're still going to do the Doggo fundraiser. It's still going to be big. We've got other people outside that contribute, so that's not going to be affected. We're still going to be doing that. So, all right. Yeah. All the money I've ever won in League is long gone, but those little pins with my name and average live on as a preferred dust collector. Yeah, pretty much. And there's a lot of people that are they're constantly mad at, well, what do we get from USBC anymore? It's like you pay $15 a year for
Storm
sanctioning. Like, that's more than enough. If all it is just a average collection, storage verification, if it's just a rules enforcement, if I'm subscribing to something to participate in something under a rules platform where they keep and maintain averages, that's worth $15 a year. You know, what do people mad that they don't get their little refrigerator magnets or whatever anymore? I did not see this, but Felix, he was my guy that's had some of the string pins put in, and I guess that things are going haywire at his place. I guess they're putting string pins in through the whole center. He sent in the video for me that I posted. After 20 years, I'm leaving the industry. New job's going to be about half the workload, and my salary doubled. Bowling's a passion thing unless you're on the short list. And this is the thing: is people are saying, "Oh, string pins are going to cost people jobs," and it's like, no. Number one, there's not the people for the jobs. That's part of the thing. They're having trouble finding parts, and they're having trouble finding people. Because again, you can go do a real job, or a real job. I mean, mechanics definitely a real job. But you can go do something else and make a whole lot more money and be a whole lot more successful, and then just keep bowling as a hobby, which is what I should have done. Careful, I got fired from my last job because I put more effort into bowling than work. There was the job that I left to go work at the pro shop and then come back to. I was perfectly qualified, and nobody else that applied for that job was qualified for it, but one of my old supervisors said, "Oh, he cares more about bowling than he does about doing his job." And so they decided not to hire me back. So that was irritating, but I ended up in a better situation anyway. And I did my job. That guy was just a crotchety old state worker that, government workers really don't know much of it. They can't even spell work.
Sure they can. FACE.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I've had many conversations with Luke, and they're always informative. I appreciate it. Yeah, more or less look up to people to help me learn and get better. And those people that you look up to should, talk to you as an equal person. Just again, I work with a bunch of, I've worked with engineers and whatever else, and, people that can't even tie their own shoes, but they think that they're better than you because they have a degree. I'm like, well, Discord is decent. Yep. Yeah, people would be mad about proposing no. Yeah, in my area, it's like lineage went up a buck, so we have to add 3 to the weekly fee. It's like, yeah, why do we have to do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Blue label's the best after platinum and gold. Yeah, gold label's good. I have a little bit of that too. Yep, scrap the prize fund and turn the money from the prize fund to the side action entry tickets every night. That would be the best thing. Get rid of the prize funds, but have side action. And that's the thing, is that people that want side action don't really, all they have is the shitty little prize fund. And the people that don't really care about the prize fund or understand the way that math works go like, oh, okay, well, I guess I don't have an option. I have to do it if I want to bowl, so I guess I'll just do it. If you get rid of prize funds, but you just have side action, then people can decide how much they want to put in, and they can actually make some real money if they want to make some real money. And if they just want to show up and bowl, then they don't have to put money in just to get that same money back or less than that at the end of the after 9 months. Just stupid. Nobody wants to be a mechanic at a bowling alley anymore. My day job is I'm shop foreman at a Maserati dealership. If I can't find anyone willing to work making good money, bowling has no chance. Yeah, if you can't get people that want to sell Maseratis or that want to work on Maseratis or whatever else, yeah. Thomas McPherson. I'm gonna go broke buying the tickets for that ball.
Yeah, you want
the crystal. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll say okay, Felix. I'm looking forward to that. So, all right. BS and underwater basket weaving with minor left-handed puppetry. Interesting. All right. So anyway, getting into the bulk of this. Bowling has many enemies. Inflation, many more options for entertainment and activities than existed a few decades ago when it was at its peak. a seeming ally in Bolero. They're buying up both struggling centers and historic centers like Thunderbolt and Carolier and North Rock. And they've been renovated, and North Rock looks really good. I mean, it looks like they're really taking care of North Rock. The caveat, though, is that it appears that there's room in Bolero's model to still serve the sport of bowling, but considering that they see the PBA as cheap advertising, it seems apparent they're just using them to serve their own interests rather than to invest into competitive bowling. You know, that's what the CEO says. Oh, yeah, the PBA is great because it's cheap advertising. And so if they can invest into these centers, they can buy these centers, then running PBA tournaments is cheaper. So it makes their advertising even cheaper. That's what's going on there. However, Bolero is a fairly new target, drawing the ire of competitive bowlers. So what happened 20 years ago when the PWBA originally folded and when the PBA was in such bad shape? Inflation was still manageable 20 years ago. And while there were definitely more things competing for people's time and money, what drove the initial decline? Because USBC or ABC, WIBC membership used to be like 9 million people way back in the day. There are several contributing factors, but a big enemy of bowling and the largest cause of the decline, in my opinion, is the very bowlers themselves. In fact, inflation affects all our daily lives, but I've seen people quit bowling over quarter raise and liners, like we talked about. There's a lot of very good bowlers in our area that quit because they were tired of the drama, the arguments, the toxicity of fellow bowlers. And a good number of people also quit before they even get into it because of gatekeeping or, again, the toxicity of fellow bowlers. There's a lot of people that have gotten into it and they get all excited about it. And I love this. And it's like, okay, well, people are mad at me for this, or they're mad at me for this, or they argue about this, or they argue about this. And it's just like, I don't even want to do this anymore. Like, bowling is fun and I like it, but I just can't stand. I just can't stand the people. You know, I'm tired of it myself. Nothing can be discussed. Everything's an argument. I don't know how many times I've sent something out of the pro shop just for the customer's 54-year-old career 173 average chain smoking teammate that bowls one league a week to tell them the pro shop guy screwed your ball up, and then have the customer come back questioning and upset at me because Bob said that there was something wrong and they believe Bob for some reason. Now, the amount of bowler ignorance is high, but the willful ignorance is what pisses me off. There's a lot of people out there that don't know the rules, they don't understand them, they don't really know anything about the basics of the game, but they refuse to learn because they don't want to have to say, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right, I was wrong, or whatever else. They just get something in their head and they latch onto it, and they don't ever want that to change or be different or told that anything's wrong or anything's up. Bowling continues to change and evolve, and bowlers refuse to change and evolve with it. Have there been several significant things that have happened to the detriment of the game? Yes, of course. I think the evolution of reactive bowling balls and the associated elevation of oil volumes have hurt it immensely, if only serving to be the main reason that competitive bowling is now extremely cost prohibitive. This is my major point now. There's a lot of things that are causing issues, but you used to be able to walk in with your one black bowling ball and bowl on lower oil volume conditions that didn't require a $50,000 lane machine to run, so it cost both you and the center significantly less to complete the bowling transaction. Bowling now is a blue-collar sport at white-collar prices because it used to just be, okay, you'd have a plastic ball, a rubber ball, a urethane ball, whatever else. You'd walk into league with a ball or two maybe. And so your expense was the bowling itself, really. It wasn't a very expensive, for the equipment to play it. It wasn't very expensive. It was like getting into, like, if you get into cornhole, I'm going to bring up cornhole because there's some very interesting parallels. But if you buy a nice professional set of boards and a professional set of bags for cornhole, it's a few $100, $300, $400. And that used to be what would get you into bowling: a ball, a bag, a nice pair of shoes, whatever else. And you were a couple balls, you were set. You were good to go. And that stuff lasted you forever because And people will say, oh, well, they just designed bowling balls to fail now, so you buy more of them. No, that's just how that actually works. Bowling balls that you can get higher performance out of naturally just aren't as durable as harder, tougher bowling balls that aren't going to perform as well. That's just a fact of life. Urethane and plastic balls just don't crack. I mean, plastic balls will kind of get chunked up, but they're not going to be just sitting in your basement and crack. That's just not going to happen. Doesn't happen with urethane stuff either. So now, in a typical bowling conversation, instead of discussion or debating this point, most bowlers would be quick to get upset and call it a boomer mindset or direct some kind of anger my way, but consider that a big part, or basically the entire point of my channel, is ball reviews. I don't have any issue with equipment, urethane, different lane conditions, two-handers, whatever. And there's a significant difference between debating an issue and being angry about something. If bowling wasn't so equipment heavy or dominant, it would be cheaper, simpler, and more accessible. Very simple point. As long as bowling remains such an equipment dominant, equipment heavy game, it is going to be cost prohibitive to a large number of people, especially with as crazy as inflation is getting. It's not going to get any better. It's just so expensive to compete in bowling right now, and it's such a headache to compete with all these people and constantly argue with people, and it's just you can't ever get anything done. And it's so expensive to participate in things that are cost prohibitive, that are complicated, are not going to survive just off basic math. Bowling is too complicated and it's too expensive to survive that long because it's so equipment dominated right now that that's not going to change because the manufacturers are also a big part of supporting bowling. But they also have an incentives to support bowling because if bowling declines, so does their business. And so they have to pump money back into bowling to keep the circle of life moving. Pop back over to the Pappy Van Winkle worth the price tag? I'm not sure. Yeah, that's how I started as a kid. One ball, one bag, and a pair of shoes, early 80s. Yeah, darts are more dangerous when drinking. Yeah, I step out for 1 minute now and the reason for the decline. Here's another one. I don't think cost can be used as an issue. Golf clubs, golf costs, clubs cost, balls cost, the shirts cost, green fees, cart rental, drinks. Golf pros make millions. But golf outside of like Top Golf or something, golf has gone down. But golf has always been a white collar sport. That's always been something that the people with the money play golf because it's fancy and whatever else. Bowling wasn't that way. Bowling was the ultimate participation sport where everybody did it. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what you made or whatever else. And that was good, cheap entertainment for bowlers. And bowling used to make really good money too. I mean, prize funds are the same today as they were like 40 years ago. You were getting $100,000 to win majors 4 decades ago. And something happened and it killed bowling and it knocked it down. And this is the other thing too, is that yes, there's golf is expensive, clubs are expensive, but you can buy a set of clubs and that can last you for several years. Bowling balls can also last you for several years, but their golf club performance doesn't really decline. It doesn't really go anywhere. Especially the driver, it's one thing, but if you can have a putter, you get a nice putter, that'll last you 10 or 15 years. a good set of irons will last you several years too. And golf fees, sure, it's, you know, $35-$40 to go out and ride 18 at some decent places. Some, you know, I know it can get a whole lot more expensive than that, but, you know, bowling is the same price. But you don't, I can't spend $35. The majority of people can't spend $35 at the bowling alley and bowl for 4 solid hours like you can with golf. I know golf as a game takes a little bit longer to do, and you can, you know, if you are practicing or something, you can clip through a game every 10 minutes. You know, it really doesn't take long to bulldoze your way through games, but you could spend $40 in an hour bowling, where $40 will get you 4 hours, 4.5 hours on a golf course. And I think it's a little bit, but golf is not quite the same, because it's never been kind of that blue collar sport. I understand the point, but I'm just saying in general, you know, the golf pros make a lot more because golf really hasn't changed nearly as much as bowling has. Or instead of, this is the thing, is that bowling balls started hooking more, and so I get into this in a minute, but I think that the thing that really hurts bowling, bowling's more expensive than golf if you actually look at it, and it doesn't sound right, but if you buy a few bowling balls a year and you bowl a handful of leagues and whatever else, bowling is actually more expensive than golf, unless you're just buying a new set of clubs every 6 months and playing golf 3 or 4 times a week. But this is the thing: is there's another thing, is that there's no incentive to want to spend that on bowling, because there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. In golf, there is something that you can kind of work towards. There is money to be made in golf, where in bowling there's just not. And if you're doing something as just a participation thing, it's a whole lot different story, because golf, unless there's golf leagues and there's stuff like that. Most people are not in golf leagues. Most people go out and play a few rounds when they can play them. With bowling, once you get into a league, it's a 9-month commitment most of the time. And so that's another factor in it too, is that golf can be picked up and put down a whole lot easier than bowling can. If you get into a league, you're in it for 9 solid months. That's another big thing that people don't really want to commit to. Blame it on the ball in the pro shop, but it's not the bowler's fault. In that particular instance, no, not really. Because they made it so that you kind of had to buy the equipment to keep up. Let's see. Yeah, lately I've strictly been buying new balls on clearance for like half the price, 6 months, 2 years after launch, and they're desperate to get rid of the old inventory. Yeah, this is another thing, is you don't have to buy. This is the thing. Bowling could be a whole lot cheaper if it wanted to be, but it's so artificially inflated by all this stuff that it just doesn't make any sense. Increasing handicaps have hurt the game. Yeah, the increasing, and this is another thing I'll talk about later in the article. So. It's good to me. Yeah, cost is definitely an issue. And the thing is if you want to get a kid ready to bowl in college and to be competitive, they need to buy balls and, bags and 8 to 12 balls to go practice. The one thing from the youth perspective, which is why it's been coming back, is that all youth stuff is expensive. It doesn't matter what sport they're into, it's freaking expensive. And so bowling just is kind of a whatever thing until you get out of school. And to continue to participate in bowling, it's still really expensive. And golf is another thing that's expensive too. And that's the thing, is that people will find a way to go to the golf course, but at the same time, more difficult, less accessible, more cost prohibitive things are going to shrink just based on inflation and how much money people do or do not have anymore. Things that are more complicated to get into and that are more expensive are going to take a lot bigger of a hit than something like cornhole. Skip. With time passing and newer technology and cover stocks and cores, it makes older balls seem irrelevant. Well, and that's the thing, is for the last like 10 or 15 years, aside from things that are like small incremental improvements, bowling technology really has nowhere to go. They're playing Mr. Potato Head now. And really the important thing is people want variety, and they want, the window that good bowling ball or the good ball reaction exists in is very small. I think I talk about that later I should get back to reading the article, but got a lot of people commenting and I want to get to everything. 90% of 240 for tournaments is too much. It seems as if folks don't want to put in the time to practice, just increase the handicap. And this is the other thing, is that they don't want to put in the time, but it's also very expensive for most people to practice too. And so if they just raise the handicap and buy more bowling balls, through it. I just don't understand why these bowling companies are selling these low to medium level balls for the same price as these high end big balls. Well, because it's one of those things that bowling balls should cost a whole lot more than they actually do, based on regular profit margins for businesses. Bowling balls, the top end of the top line bowling balls should be $300 a piece before drilling, if to compete with other stuff. Because I mean, people go in there and they'll pay $3 for a large soda or pop or whatever it's called from where you're at, and that costs the center like 15 cents, or that costs the business like 15 cents for that 32 ounces of pop. That isn't even 32 ounces. It's more like 25 ounces, 20 ounces by the time you get all the ice in there. And other products that, you go buy a $50 shirt at Under Armour and it probably costs them $1 or $1.50. I mean, just huge margins on things that you don't even think about and go in and buy. But a pro shop will spend they'll pay $150 to $170 their cost for one of the top line bowling balls that you will then pay $200 or $220 for. And so if margins in bowling were the same as margins in other industries or in other businesses, bowling balls would be much more expensive, or they should be much more expensive. And people complain about it in bowling because they're not used to it, but they'll gladly go pay $50 for a $1 shirt. And it just doesn't make any sense. All right, if I can get my... All right, go back to all right. Equipment, also, we talked about this. If bowling wasn't so equipment heavy or dominant, it would be cheaper, simpler, and more accessible. That's the one thing, is that a lot of people quit simply because, again, it's a blue collar sport. People participated because you just had a ball and a bag and some shoes, and you just walked in and you bowled every week and it was fine. Now there's all this equipment, bowling's getting more expensive, whatever else. And there's a lot of people that quit just because they didn't have the money for it, or they didn't want to spend the money on it. So golf didn't explode with cost as much as bowling did. And that's the thing, is people, you get into golf, you are used to the cost, you expect the cost, whatever else. Bowling started very, very cheap. And then as soon as reactive equipment started getting prevalent, then all of a sudden the price to play the game went up significantly. It went up very quickly. Equipment also significantly increases the learning curve. All the different ball choices, the very difficult to understand world of cover formulas, layouts, and all the tech that goes into oils and lane surfaces, and the myriad other things that contribute to ball reaction are extremely difficult to catch up to and require years of experience and effort to understand, let alone master, if that's even possible. Norm Duke a couple years ago said he still learns things every day, and if he hasn't mastered bowling, it's not possible, especially for the piss and vinegar league crowd. Now, it's very easy to complain, but few people actually objectively analyze the issues and provide solutions. It's very, people will complain, but then as soon as you, okay, well, what would you do? So, I don't know. Well, that's not for me to decide. The powers that be need to figure this out and fix it. It's like, okay, you can complain, but where are some real solutions? The problem for bowling right now seems to be that there's no immediately positive or beneficial directions to go. Every adjustment or correction to an issue will face backlash and resistance, and would, in the vast majority of cases, result in catastrophic short-term consequences. The real issue, though, is that if competitive bowling continues down the same road it's going, it will eventually die, because it's just been on a downward slope. When you have USBC being happy about, it's like, oh, okay, well, after COVID, we projected that we were going to lose this many members. We projected we were going to lose this many members. We've only lost this many members, so we're doing good. It's like, you're still losing members. You're just not losing. Just when not losing as many members as you thought is a good thing, you're just in trouble. Now, it will eventually die and have to be completely rebuilt anyway. It'll just be a much longer and slower process. Again, I think that we're going to be fine here for a little while. And the youth movement is they're putting a bunch of money into the youth. Things like the Storm Youth Championships, Junior Gold, Team Masters, whatever else. There's all kinds of things for youth to do. Now, a lot of people, I saw some stupid meme going around, or something going around the other day where somebody was saying bowling is the only sport where kids can start earning scholarship money at the age of 5. It's like, well, that's kind of like gambling. There was a guy that used to play Keno at the bowling alley all the time, and he would spend $20. He'd put in $20 on Keno tickets, and if he got back $10, he would say he won $10 on Keno. Not that it's like, well, I put $20 in, I got $10 back, so I just won $10 on Keno. It's like, well, how much did you spend? Well, $20, but I made $10. That's what youth scholarships are like the majority of the time. People will spend $300, $400, $500 to travel to these tournaments for their kids to win $50 or $100 back in scholarship money. It's like, oh yeah, we're socking away that scholarship money for college. If you would just not spend all the money that you're spending on taking them to these bowling tournaments, you could save up a whole lot more money than they're going to make in scholarships the vast majority of the time. So that's just one of the stupider things I've ever heard. Only I would say the top 5% are the ones that are actually earning scholarship, actually earning more scholarship money than their parents or than they are spending in travel, entry fees, equipment, investment. There's only 5% are having a positive return on investment. But, if you spend $50,000 taking your kids to tournaments for 15 years, just for them to have $20,000 in scholarship money or something, that's ridiculous. And most people don't do the math. They spend $500 to take their kids to a tournament, and that kid gets $200 back at that tournament. Oh, that's $200 worth of scholarship money. That's going to be really helpful later down the line. So the problem is that after you get out of youth leagues, there's nothing. But unless you make the jump to bowling regionals, significant higher level competition, you have leagues and handicap tournaments. And all I see is bitching about handicap tournaments and people using whiteout on their scores. Dougie has a whiteout tournament now. People are sandbagging, writing down wrong scores, just all kinds of issues with tournaments constantly. I mean, it just fills up my feed constantly. And it's one thing to invest into youth bowling because they are your future consumers. It's not really because, at this point with something on life support, you need to invest in the youth ranks to get them hooked when they're young so that they will continue to bowl and they will continue to buy things. So you're not necessarily investing in the future of the sport. You're investing in the future of the profits for the future of the revenue generation for your company is what we're doing here.
Details.
So the difference is if we just kind of let bowling die, if we just kind of let it trickle down, USBC is almost under 1 million members. If we just keep letting it trickle and string pins are going to knock a whole bunch of people out, and Bolero's bought a bunch of centers and are going to more open play stuff. If we let it just kind of die out, there will be a whole lot fewer people that care to want to revive it or put back into it. There's going to be a lot of people that once they leave bowling, they're kind of done with it. They've found something else, or found something more interesting, or something cheaper, or whatever else, and they just don't want to. It's just okay. I bowled, and now I don't bowl anymore. I've moved on. The major issue is that a reset or a course correction would shock bowling to its core, would be extremely painful, and possibly just finish it off right here and now. That would be a possibility. Again, if you do something crazy like banning reactive balls, or banning two-handers, or banning heavy oil lane conditions or whatever. If you do anything like that, you're going to have problems. When bowling was popular, it was cheap, simple, and challenging. Being proficient at bowling wasn't expensive, but it took time and effort. Being truly competitive now still requires a lot of time and effort, but it's also extremely expensive. Bowling's greatest blessing is the design of the game itself. It's simple, it's confined, it's indoors, it's not too physically stressful or taxing. It's basically jumbo skee ball to a certain extent. Cornhole has become very popular for many of the same reasons. It's cheap, it's simple, new word. It's cheap, it's simple, it's more challenging than you think it is, but it's even more flexible and less physically stressful. You can own your own competition level boards and bags for less than it costs for a single ball, bag, and pair of shoes, and you can set the game up anywhere. Earnings for professional cornhole players have crept up to the point where they're literally, legitimately beginning to compete with professional bowling's earnings outside of the top 10. So cornhole players, some of the best professional players are around the $50,000 mark. Bowling, you have several that are north of the $100,000 thing, but it's a very extremely small percentage. And cornhole doesn't require anywhere near what bowling does. Cornhole even has a 24/7 cornhole channel now. Now it's a subscription. I don't know if it's a subscription thing or not, but it's on a website. There's not a 24/7 cornhole TV channel. But most places have gone to their own, Bull TV, whatever else. But there's a 24/7 cornhole channel that you can get to. Yeah, I just stop drinking whiskey. Liquid Death, Armless Palmer. This stuff's amazing.
Non-alcoholic.
Yeah, non-alcoholic. Now that my throat's going dry here. Catch up with the comments. Let's see. $8 for a soda at the center where I'm bowling, or $6 for a soda. Summer League, they have a self-service machine at a sign that says no free refills. Good luck with that. Yeah, and see, the thing that gets me is league bowlers all wanting and rolling top shelf equipment on house that burns up when they would score higher with mid to lower end balls. And that's the thing of if that's the whole point of me trying to do reviews, is that if I can inform people on what they're buying, what they should be throwing, instead of them just, oh, this is more expensive, it hooks more, and I guess that's better, because it's always been presented as more hook is better. Why people don't ever stop and consider why. But again, it's so expensive, and if people don't have fun doing it, they're just not going to keep doing it. So, yeah, that's true, Justin. And the solution to that, instead of changing balls, is to have the center out put out 30 mils. This is the thing, and this is what I will talk about later. Why did oil volumes increase with bowling balls that hooked more? This is something that I didn't really understand, because the more oil they put out, the more bowling balls will be designed to hook, and then the more oil they'll put out, and then it just kind of goes back and forth. This causes big problems that I'll talk about here in a minute. Yep, true. Don't complain if you don't have a solution to offer. I have plenty of solutions. That's a perception thing then. Golf has always been expensive. Now that bowling is expensive, it's just not as popular, maybe. I don't necessarily disagree with you there. I think it's just a different, bowlers have such a different perspective. Golfers, again, it's a white collar sport versus a blue collar sport. Golfers expect that they're going to pay money for things. Bowlers are half of the reason that bowling is going, the bowling's going away, because again, you raise lineage 25 cents and people quit. You know, bowling I know a lot of people that quit because they said bowling just got too expensive. Golf's always been expensive. Yeah, bowling ball companies are just going to mine this thing until it's dry. But I get it. And this is the thing. If you ban reactive equipment, let's just say that I talk about that a little bit later. But if you ban equipment, manufacturers go under, and then all the money that they're pumping into bowling, that goes bye-bye. Pro shops all over the country go under. You're talking about thousands of people out of work for a whole bunch of different things. If you ban reactive balls, bowling crashes just instantly. You know, I think it needs to happen, but bowling dies instantly. Bowling as we know it right now just is done. Yeah. Yeah, dying sport, $50 to $60 per hour open bowling. This is the thing. Open bowling at Bolero is like Top Golf. And I don't think people realize that. Top Golf is insanely popular. And I'm sure that golfers don't understand why, just the same as regular bowlers don't understand why open play is so popular and people want to spend so much money and whatever else. And, league bowlers drive it's like, okay, well, competitive golf, I think, has faced some of the same challenges that competitive bowling has. I don't think near as much, but they have faced some of those challenges. But then you have places like Top Golf open, and people go there and spend all kinds of money just with house clubs and house balls and whatever. They don't give a crap. They're drinking and just smashing balls off a high rise at some targets out there and playing some games. And Top Golf is wildly entertaining. But there's a lot of people that look at Top Golf and open play bowling at Bolero as the same thing. They're like, okay, well, let's go golf. Go golf in the summer when it's nice. We can go bowling in the winter, and they're indifferent. But all of us are swearing, Bolero is just ruining bowling and all these problems, whatever else. It's Top Golf is what Bolero is. They're Top Golf. But that's why people don't mind spending 50 to 60 hours to open bowl, because when they go to bowl, when open play bowlers go to bowl, they're expecting to save money. When competitive bowlers go to bowl, they're looking to save as much money as possible. So they're like, well, I'm only going to spend this money. If somebody goes open bowling, they're prepared to spend whatever. Just like if you go to Top Golf or whatever, you probably spend $50, $60, because by the time you bowl, or by the time you play for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever else, and you buy some drinks, you buy something to eat, whatever else, you're spending $40, $50. It's the same open bowling too. They don't go in there and try to say, okay, well, I'm only going to spend $15. So what can I get for $15? And they're done. It's like, yeah, let's go bowl. And they're there for the experience. And so they're not there to pinch pennies. Thing is, fixing bowling to me is that it's all All participatory recreational sports are in decline. Occasionally something will emerge, cornhole, but they all seem to cool off eventually. Cornhole probably will too. I think it's more about our attitudes as a country species towards activity that involves social grouping. That part of the world has changed, and sports are just getting caught up in it. And yeah, people don't want to put the time in it. They want to be more entertained rather than participating in something, getting better at something, and competing in something. Yeah, honestly, what I've gotten out of bowling is the friendships and camaraderie. I would miss that part of bowling if it died tomorrow. And see, that's the thing, is that I really wish I'd have made different choices. I don't want to take anything back, because the people I've met and all the people that we have in the Discord and we go to tournaments with, and I've got a lot of really good friends. I've got a wife out of bowling too. I've got an awful lot of things out of bowling that I wouldn't have otherwise, and so I wouldn't change it for the world. I would change how I went about it significantly, though, and it's to the point where if I could find another way to accomplish the same things that we're accomplishing right now, I could stay with the bowling group, keep doing the tournaments, and find another way to do the rescue thing and get the league jerseys for the kids and whatever else. I'd do it, but I have zero interest in participating in bowling anymore, period. Like, I'm not even mad that I have to go bowling. I'm just annoyed. Like, we're going to go practice. We're going to nationals here in a couple of weeks. And I'm looking forward to the trip. I'm looking forward to seeing people. The bowling can piss on itself. I don't want to go practice tomorrow. I don't want to bowl league anymore. I don't want to go to tournaments. I have zero interest in even, it used to be one of those things where it's like, it's like, okay, well, I've got the channel, I've got all this stuff, I've got this community, whatever else. And if I'm going to be doing it, I might as well do it well, because there's nothing worse than half-assing something that you kind of have to do anyway. But the thing is I don't want to quit. I want bowling to be something that I can have fun doing again. I want bowling to be something that, again, when we're talking about positivity, bowling needs to give somebody something to be positive about. Because if I say this, it's like, well, why don't you just quit then? Why don't you just quit instead of sticking around and being a baby and bitching about it? It's like, well, I don't really want to quit. I want bowling to come back to me, basically. And that's the other thing is like, and then if you quit, it's, oh, yep, you're just quitting, you're just bailing on it. We need people being positive, and we need people sticking in there. And I guess you really don't care that much. It's like, well, if you're going to gaslight me either way, then whatever. Yeah, if you explain the profit angle of scholarships, they'll call you negative. And that's the thing, is they say, well, we need positivity in bowling. We need people in there. We need people supporting it, whatever else. But it's just like a failing restaurant. If you watch any of these shows, and we binge watch food shows constantly. That's kind of our thing. We watch a bunch of Gordon Ramsay and Restaurant Impossible and whatever else, and it's no different than the restaurant business. If a restaurant is failing, that people say, well, we need community support. We need you out here. We don't want to close and whatever else. It's like, but you can't just say, okay, well, people need to come support us. You need to give them something to support. That's why shows like Restaurant Impossible and Hell on Wheels and whatever else, and Hotel Hell, whatever. That's why these things exist, to revitalize and renovate businesses so that they are worthy of the patronage. That's the thing. You have to have a business or a restaurant or whatever else. You have to give people a reason to come support that business. Bowling is really not giving people a reason to support it at all. And that's the problem. You can't, well, we need more positivity. We need more people supporting it. We don't want negativity. We don't want complaining. We don't want whatever else. It's like, well, this stuff needs to exist to fix bowling to the point where more people want to join it than want to leave it. That's what people are not expecting. Bowling needs a Gordon Ramsay to come in here and just yell at everybody, make some people want to quit, and fix it so that it's something that people want to participate in again. Now, yep, just want to say thanks for the honest reviews. Much appreciated and respected. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, scholarships tournaments definitely have a scam feel to them. It's not, and yeah, it's one of those things where they know that if you do some kind of youth thing, that's why I'm iffy on Storm's youth staffer program thing, and why I'm skeptical of the whole youth movement in general, because it just, I mean, and I don't want to take anything, because the Storm Youth Championships are wonderful. Junior Gold's wonderful. The Teen Masters, I'm a huge fan of. Teen Masters is exceptional. I think that's the way that bowling as a whole needs to go. I think Teen Masters bowling is how, that's how bowling used to survive, and that's how I think that it, survives better, easier going forward. But at the same time, it's just really hard to look at it and not think things like an evolution, like the evolution staff, where now we're putting teenagers on staff. And some of the things that we're seeing with that, it just seems like, okay, well, we're seeing the writing on the wall, and we're getting concerned about where our profits are going to come from. So we need to really invest heavily in the youth, so that we will have customers 10, 20 years down the line. It's convenient that it's such a it's like one of those, it's like when you raise money for charities or something like that. It's some of them. It's like, okay, cool, we're doing a good thing, but there's an awful lot of people that are benefiting from it. At some certain point, it just kind of loses me. Yeah, I feel that bowling from a true sport perspective is dying due to there seemingly being no incentive for bowlers to do better. There really isn't. In golf, if you get a kid into golf young, then you're looking at being, if they get good, you're looking at being set for life. And bowling, you're looking at being miserable for life, outside of a very small handful of exceptions. Let's see. I need to get back into the.
You're okay.
Need to get back into my. Yeah, sounds like I need a small break. I need a break. I just need break, period. Yeah, they're sucking the fun out of it. The things that they require from these young people is perverse. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's bad enough the things that it's bad enough the Kool-Aid drinkers that they have from the adults, but when you puff it up as this awesome thing, all you're really doing when you get youth into something like that, you putting youth. You're basically using them to promote your business. That's, yeah, I mean, it's just, you're creating future Kool-Aid drinkers. All right, let's get back into this. So when I was talking about the cornhole thing, if you're a bowler, you kind of likely chuckled about cornhole being compared to bowling, because bowling is something historical and elite and not comparable to a backyard party drinking game. But most levels of bowling have become a party drinking game. It just doesn't fit in the backyard. Bowling used to be historical and elite, but as technology developed the game away from its core, it also made it significantly more expensive, which is a key factor in the decline of competitive competition. Technology has added a few innovations to cornhole, such as double-sided bags. You got one slick side and one felt side that offers a little bit of grip. But the core game and its regulations are basically unchanged. There's no, and maybe again, maybe cornhole isn't big or mainstream enough for most people to be impacted by this train of thought, but just try to imagine what would change if cornhole followed a similar path as bowling did. So imagine if regulations in cornhole began to allow different board surfaces that increased or reduced slickness. Imagine if the hole size could fluctuate, the distance between boards could as well. Then you'd, of course, have accompanying changes in bags. They become more varied to account for the differences in the game. All of a sudden, the business of cornhole would boom. The better of a player you became, the more different sets of boards and bags you'd have to own to keep up, and the game would suffer significantly for a number of reasons. A shorter distance between boards and larger holes in the boards would make the game much easier and much more accessible, providing faster success to newer players and a likely much smaller window of enjoyment. Graduating to tougher levels of the game would be both frustrating and, more importantly, exponentially more expensive. People would then begin to claim that I could be a cornhole pro too if I had reps and all this free equipment. Doesn't that sound familiar? I'm technically a scratch bowler with each hand, but I don't belong anywhere near a professional bowling event, regional or national with either, and no amount of reps or equipment is going to help that because my average is significantly inflated by technology and the ease of the course, which is problem number one and perhaps the largest one. A recreational bowler simply has no frame of reference for how much better the pros are because technology has made bowling success so attainable that someone can easily be averaging over 200 inside of a year. I started bowling seriously at age 19. I had bowled for a couple of years when I was 11 or 12 or whatever, but so I was familiar with bowling. But I threw my heaviest ball back then was I got up to a 10-pound ball, Kmart special, that I threw straight down the middle. So I wasn't a bowler. So when I started after I graduated, my invested and sustained career began with a conventionally drilled blue urethane Columbia tie beast, and I set my average at 155 the first day of league. I got hooked really quickly. I bought a Brunswick Monster after Christmas, and then a Storm Trauma a couple weeks before the end of the league. So that year, my first year, I went from averaging 155 with a conventionally drilled urethane tie beast to shooting my first 600 with the Monster, my first 700 with the Trauma, the very end of the last week of winter leagues. I finished with my average at 177. I then set it in the summer league at 205, and it stayed there the entire summer. And then I bowled my first 300 a couple months into the new fall season, just a little over a year after deciding to take it seriously. So I started youth leagues in August of one year, and by October the following year, I was averaging 210. I had my first 300. I drilled several more balls. I got an El Nino 2000. That was my first 300 ball. I bought an El Nino exit. I got a trauma recovery. And I bought myself a nice pair of SST 5s. If anybody remembers the nice kind of blue and gray suede SST 5s, I had a pair of those. And I bought one of those big ass 4-ball rollers that everybody had back then. Now, I invested a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I practiced a bunch. So I'm not going to take anything away from myself there. But I put in a bunch of work. I also started to learn and understand all the different equipment options. Now, was I anywhere close to as good as my average or scores would have suggested I was? Absolutely not. I was a complete wall baby that really had no idea about anything. I just knew, okay, you throw the ball here, you buy a bunch of bowling balls, and you kind of play third arrow, and you hook it a little bit, and the pins fall down. And you just keep doing that. So if you take away all the equipment and softer conditions, or even just one of those, the vast majority of bowlers would completely flounder and their scores would fall off the face of the earth. This happens with zero other sports, by the way. The closest comparison would be golf, but the beauty of golf is that even with powered up drivers and golf balls that aid distance, it's inherently a very difficult game. Even with all the souped up equipment, hitting the ball straight and getting it into the cup on even a flat, short, wide open course is still challenging for the vast majority of people. Now, bowling itself, even as easiest, is still quite difficult for most bowlers, to be fair. Again, I don't want to insult anybody. The average of all USBC members is in the 170s. It's like 175. So if you take the million USBC members, the average of the USBC members is 175, which I think is a lot lower than people think it is. I think that people think it's probably in the 200s. It's not. It's 175. So people that just do have the bowling talent, there's some people that average 160, 170 their entire lives. And I don't want to, because there's certain things that I'm not good at too. So I don't want to throw anybody under the bus or disparage somebody or act like if you only average 170, you don't count. That's not the point. Because if you do average 170, you know what I'm talking about because you see all these 240 averages and you wish that you had the kind of handicap to compete with those bowlers. So what I mean to say here is that the speed at which you can become a sanctioned scratch bowler is much quicker than the speed that you can become a sanctioned scratch player in literally any other sport or game on the planet due to how much easier that equipment and legal playing conditions make it to score. So if I take, I can make, you can give me 10 random people and I can make more of them scratch bowlers more quickly than you could do with anything else. Give a golf pro 10 random people to make into scratch golfers. I can there's people that are awful that average 220.
Yeah, but maybe this.
But anyway, so with any other, the other thing is here too, with any other sport that you watch, there's zero delusions of grandeur because it's easy to see why their professional players are better than the amateurs. It's better to see why professional basketball, baseball, football, hockey, golf, pool, darts, yes, even cornhole players are better than the average league player is. In bowling, there's no such distinction due in large part to the unseen or unrealized but massive difference between difficulty in bowling at the league level versus bowling at the professional level. Again, while you as a bowler may have scoffed at my paragraph about professional cornhole, that's how other people outside of bowling see bowling. It's not something to be respected. Again, it's something akin to Topgolf. When someone that doesn't bowl can walk in, grab a house ball, house shoes, have 3 or 4 drinks, and no thumb their way to a 200 while seeing pros on TV sometimes bowling the same scores, there's nothing there in their mind to respect. We bowled a charity tournament with a bunch of current and ex-KU players recently, and one of the football players from several years ago, he was throwing a 12-pound house ball, and big dude, huge dude, just yeeting it, oscooing it right down the middle, and he shot 210 or 220 one of the games because he was just obliterating the pins. And here we are, and we're bowling right next to him, and so we've got all our fancy bowling balls and whatever else, and he's just mowing everybody down. So that just doesn't happen. You don't have somebody that doesn't play golf just get a set of clubs from a set of rental clubs and go out there and shoot around in the 70s. Does not happen. Bowling it can. Watched it happen. Several people. So I wrote an article a while back in contradiction to one from Big Mike of Sweep the Rack podcast, where I basically argued that there's no issue with easier house conditions for casual leagues, and I still don't think there is, but I've got a caveat now. Most people don't want to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars a year buying equipment and practicing just to go beat their heads against the wall league on some sport compliant condition. I don't think they should have to. There's a lot of people that just use bowling for an excuse to get out of the house, an excuse to go spend some time with friends, throw a heavy ball at some weird looking sticks, have a few drinks, and have some fun. They don't want to have to, okay, well, here's the pattern this week, and you're going to have to shoe up, and you're going to have to, you've got that much room to aim at and whatever else. They just want to go bowl. And if some people just want to go play, just want to go to Top Golf, it's like, okay, this is our Top Golf night. We're just going to go out, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with people. What?
No,
Oof.
there's boom booms going on. You're not going out. Not happening.
So I don't think that. I think that it's nice to have the options to where people can have reactive balls and wide open house shots so that they can just go knock some pins down and have fun. However, this is the distinction to where if people averaging 230, 240 is so commonplace now that they don't see them. I don't know how many idiots that couldn't even, I don't know. But they then, well, if I had a rep and all these free bowling balls, I could go bowl on tour too. No, you couldn't. Chris Farley and Veronica Vaughn and Billy Madison. Me and her. No, you didn't. No, you couldn't. So what I think about this is that hi, buddy. Come here. Hi. What are you doing? I know. I can still read this. I've come around to thinking that those kinds of leagues shouldn't be sanctioned or they shouldn't count because it would be like playing cornhole with bigger holes in the boards and a shorter distance between them. I think that there should be a limit on, okay, if you're bowling on a pattern that's under 7-1 or that's over 7-1, so if it's 10-1, 12-1, 20-1, whatever else, once it gets to a certain ratio or whatever, your scores shouldn't actually count for anything. You can be a part of Hi. You can be a part of USBC. You can have the playing rules. You can be protected by the rules. You can still have averages even. It's very hard. I don't understand why we can base an average for something like the Open Championships on a wide open mixed league average. I don't understand how that translates or how you can get from super, super easy to we're going to go bowl on something ridiculously challenging and try to fairly put people in divisions fairly when what they're bowling on is not within any realistic range of what you're going to be bowling on in that tournament. That just doesn't make any sense. The difficulty of pool is, I should probably look at comments. Okay, so we got that. Bowling needs youth to survive. I'm not someone who hasn't learned how to bowl yet needs 6 balls, but bowling needs bowlers. Absolutely. Yes, and this is another thing that the other thing that bowling needs from youth is to eventually convert them into adult bowlers. It used to be that you wanted to get out of youth as quickly as 20, 30 years ago. You wanted to get out of youth as quickly as possible because there wasn't really anything in youth. And once you got into adult leagues, you could start bowling big tournaments and making money. So that's why everybody would get out of youth leagues as quickly as possible. Now you have people staying in youth leagues as long as possible because the youth scene is amazing. And then once you get out of that, there's not much for the adults. You have to do a whole lot of you have to do a whole lot more to get involved in.
There's a lot of travel.
You have to put a whole lot more effort into finding stuff as an adult than you have to do finding stuff as a youth. Yeah, they'll burn them out, discard them. Just look at Junior Team USA and how many don't even touch bowling balls anymore. Yes, I actually have I know somebody that was that lived here in town. She went to Wichita State. She bowled with Danielle McEwen. She won a gold medal at the 2015 World Youth Games or something like that. And she hasn't bowled for years now. She gave it up.
Genoa, though, still does.
Genoa still bowls, but Kelsey hasn't bowled in.
No, it was just more of a counter.
Yeah. Some of them still do it, but yeah, you can't have. And there was nobody that was in a bowling alley more than Kelsey was. I mean, they were in a bowling alley constantly, all over the place, and she traveled all over the world, bowled for Wichita State, whatever else. And then a couple years after that, it's kind of like, no, I got a job and a life. I got kids now. Bowling's boring now. It's like. And so, yeah, if you can't get people like that to keep doing it, I don't even know. I think Cornhole will eventually make some of those changes to start to differentiate between the really good and the great. And see, this is the one thing why I don't mind reactive balls, because it does, the more complicated something gets, the better you have to be at it. The simplicity, the beauty of something in its simplicity is that the simpler it is, you can just have these people that are good at, they're like professional cornhole. There was a doubles tournament, and a 12-year-old won, with a 12-year-old and his partner won. And you start to think it's like, okay, well, if a 12-year-old can win a professional tournament, then it's probably too easy. It's probably something that's too simple. That's kind of the beauty of it at the same time, is that it's not really complicated. You don't need to put a ton of time into something. You don't need, now, again, cornhole is a whole lot tougher than people think it is. And there's all kinds of, Anthony Simonson won a professional tournament at 18 or 19 or whatever crap he was. So there are always exceptions to the rule.
Oh no, Jillian Martin.
So yeah, you can't really take one exception and base any kind of anything off of it. But a 12-year-old winning a professional tournament is tough to explain away, so to speak. So I appreciate reactive balls because it increases the learning curve. It also increases the amount of knowledge. You have to have more knowledge. You have to have more experience. You have to practice more. You have to understand this stuff better. Anytime something gets more complicated, being proficient at it is increasingly, considerably more difficult than if something is just basic and simple. Because there's not a whole lot of, there's a lot of strategy in cornhole, a lot more than you think that there is, and it just comes down to having to make shots. But at the same time, making something that much more complicated, that much more expensive, I think bowling has gone too far. I think that there is a way to find a middle ground where you can have some of the extra challenge and the kind of meta game that all these equipment options add, without making it so complicated that people just can't even figure it out. Like Pete Weber, again, knows nothing about cover stocks, cores, layouts, whatever else. He just knows he throws the bowling ball. He can read what it does, and he knows what he needs out of a bowling ball to work in a certain situation. And so he throws them. He sees, okay, well, this is going to be good in this certain situation or whatever. He can't tell you a damn thing about any of it. He just knows, okay, well, this one's earlier and smoother. This one hooks more. This one does this. This one is a little sharper. This one goes a little straighter off the end of the pattern. This one does this. So he knows how to read ball reaction. He just has no flipping idea how to get there on his own.
I'm giving you workouts, my pig.
But yeah, SST5 back when Dexter gave you your money's worth. Yeah, because you got all the heels and soles. Big Mike needs to change his name to Big Hater. I didn't used to like Mike or Rob. I don't watch the show because I just don't watch anything bowling related. I'll skim through a few videos here and there, but I'm just not going to sit and watch. I'm just not going to sit there and watch somebody ramble for 2 hours. But once you kind of get their wavelength, they're funny. I get them now, and so I understand. I don't have a problem with them. But it took me a minute to get their wavelength, basically. Doggo. Yeah, and this is the other thing too. I'm full of devil's advocate stuff tonight. I have no problem letting the 240 average house mice go to nationals, get an education. What the differences are, I get beat up every time I go, but that's fine. And that's the thing, is that all the people that do talk about stuff, but they have it's like, well, if I go to these, I don't have the reps and the free bowling balls, and so how am I supposed to even compete? They make their own excuses before they even get into it. And to a certain extent, having extra sets of eyes and being able to drill a bunch of equipment on a whim, this is the other thing where I don't quite like what it's gotten into. There's so many different options out there that right now, and the pros will tell you the same thing, having the right ball in your hand is incredibly important. There's almost too much emphasis on it right now. If you have the right ball in your hand, it can make the difference. And I do appreciate being able to find what that right ball is, having that knowledge and experience base to where you can find the right ball quicker than somebody else can. But you have tournament formats where it's 12 games of qualifying, 6 games of qualifying, whatever else. In some of the smaller format ones, it's 12 games of qualifying to get into the later rounds. If you don't find that ball until game 4, you're not going to catch up with the people that found it game 1. So that's the problem, is that it's so equipment heavy to the point that if you just happen to luckily, especially when you're dragging 30 balls into a tournament like the pros are, if you happen to find that ball quicker than somebody else does, having the right ball in your hand can be a whole lot more important than actually where you throw it or how you throw it. If you get matched up and you're good to go, the saying is you can't out-bowl bad ball reaction. And so I think it's been made so complicated and so, crazy almost, that it's just it's not too much more than a slot machine, because you got to kind of, it's one of those things where you got to keep showing up and you got to keep putting your name in the hat and keep putting your name in the hat and keep putting your name in the hat. It's just like gambling. You got to just keep punching the button. You just got to keep punching the button until something magical happens. Yeah. Wait until you play against the 12-year-old. We have a better shot at beating Simo and bowling than beating him in Cornhole. Yeah, he's crazy. He is crazy. Crazy. Yeah. I love Sweep the Rag, by the way, but Big Mike is a born hater. Yeah. I mean, he is, but he goes with it. He kind of knows that that's his shtick, and he leans into it. And so that's what makes, because he's not really, like, he has things that fire him up, but he's not going to get angry about them. He will have a debate with you and he'll talk to you and he'll, whatever, but he's not going to actually get angry and obtuse about it. Yep. Yeah, you can't out-bowl bad ball reaction, so true. And that's one of those things. That's what makes it a little nebulous or a little bit of a problem. When you have so many options and so much is required out of the bowler in such a short amount of time. I mean, if you're bowling, if it's one of those cream rises to the top thing where you're bowling 40 or 50 games in a tournament, it's completely different than bowling 12, getting into some match play, and then having winning a tournament on 20 games or less. That's one of those, you just gotta keep punching the button and hope it's your week. Okay. All right. The difficulty of pool just is what it is. Same with darts, same with cornhole. It's just that most people don't have or know of a specific standard or target. With any of those games, you just play, however poorly, until someone wins. With golf and bowling, you do have a standard. You're not aiming at with those, obviously, in pool, you want to run the table. In darts, you want to throw the fewer darts you can throw, the better. But with golf and bowling, you have a score that you're aiming at. So, and again, the critical difference is I could take 10 random people and make more of them scratch bowlers more quickly than could be done with golf. Even on easier courses with the most juiced up clubs and balls you can find, becoming a scratch golfer is extremely difficult, but becoming a scratch bowler is not. And this unfortunately sets the perception that the only difference between you and a pro is the staff team. The problem is that the cat's so far out of the bag by now that if you all of a sudden told people their scores and averages didn't count anymore unless they were on tougher conditions, they would riot. A different way would be to limit or eliminate reactive equipment, but this would also cause people to riot, in addition to throwing the entire industry into chaos, because the beating heart of competitive bowling right now is the bowling ball manufacturer. The level of sponsorship and support being given to competitive bowling right now is driven significantly by the manufacturers. And if all of a sudden you remove the manufacturers, you first of all put hundreds of people out of jobs, but competitive bowling likely fails instantly. However, as I mentioned before, youth bowling is surging and is going the direction bowling always should have been. which is competition on more difficult conditions at a minimum. Jillian Martin famously shot her first 300 within the last couple of years because she never bowled on easier conditions. That's what she shot her first 300 and said it was, and everybody's like, oh no, that couldn't have been, or whatever. And her dad's like, no, seriously, she just doesn't bowl on house shots. And so that was the first time she'd ever shot 300 because she just didn't bowl on easy stuff very often, or at all. The Teen Masters even limits the equipment to a single plastic ball and a single urethane ball and competes on much different conditions. And it's the model that I would seriously argue should be the standard for bowling as a whole. I understand that puts me in the boomer crowd, but let me explain the benefits here. In my opinion, competitive bowling needs a hard and significant reset to begin to gain respect again. The power game is here to stay regardless and would be especially significant if we return to plastic and weaker, harder urethane. However, I would also say lane conditions need to be adjusted significantly, a la Teen Masters. Reactive equipment and lane conditions create a lot more issues than people realize. Ball strength and surface is largely unregulated, but the most baffling thing to me is that lane conditions have been adjusted to allow and even cater to it. Bowling balls got stronger, and for some reason, oil volumes got heavier as a result, because for some reason, the industry associates volume and ratio with difficulty. That's not unfair to a certain extent, because if you can't find enough friction to get the ball to hook, it makes hitting the pocket and hitting the pocket effectively and repeatedly quite difficult. Admitted. However, because ball strength and the amount of surface is virtually unregulated, you can use these super strong cover, big flaring balls at insane surfaces to contend with that and blow up a lane condition and transition it quickly to make it significantly easier. The response to this has been to just increase volumes. However, more volume means more surface, stronger balls, and faster transition. Faster transition creates all kinds of havoc and makes tournament play incredibly inconsistent and gives things like who you cross with, who you follow, what side of the lane you bowl on, a much larger impact than how you actually perform. Look at the main complaints in bowling right now. Following urethane, the heavy urethane usage in and of itself, two-handers, lefties, etc. All this can be solved instantly by dropping the oil volumes. If you drop oil volumes, reactive equipment goes out the window, heavy surface goes out the window, and a rev rate to a certain extent does too, because now you're concerned with getting the ball down the lane. Less oil means weaker balls at smoother or shinier surfaces that either don't flare or flare very little, and which don't absorb oil, which significantly reduces transition and the speed of transition. When you do that, you also regain the balance between the sides of the lane. If the left and the right start out equal, but the right doesn't transition significantly, you then have much closer to a similar game between the two sides, rather than the chaos we have now, where the disparity often means one side or the other ends up much more scoreable than the other. You either have a situation like the Masters this year, where the lefties were virtually shut out, or you have the World Series of Bowling, which was absolutely dominated by the lefties. Lower oil volumes and less reactive equipment also means scores are going to go down as a result, even if you make the conditions easier. Those that do score big are going to have to do a whole lot better to do that. It also significantly reduces the cost to bowl, because now you're not going to be buying several bowling balls a year. You're just going to buy a couple and really only have to buy more when use catches up with the ones that you have. You're not going to be concerned with reactive balls dying or cracking anymore, or conspiracy theories about them being designed to do so to make people buy them even faster. You'd be back to the good old-fashioned simple game of bowls, and even though bowling itself will continue to get more and more expensive, the money you'd be spending would just be on the bowling, not the dozens of bowling balls that you'd have to buy just to maintain a higher average in league, let alone compete more seriously at tournaments. Sandbagging would also be significantly reduced, because if scores are lower, there won't be as much volatility or such a range of scores from center to center or condition to condition, so the associated impact of the infinite number of variables that contribute to scoring in bowling would be minimized. You wouldn't need to set up a handicap system that enables a handicap bowler to get to an 800 series to compete with the scratch bowlers, because scores or scoring paces would rarely, if ever, be that high. Honor scores would also return to being rare holy grails, not something that's a bone of contention for people angry with USBC, because their whole $15 a year sanction fee doesn't earn them their annual ring because their whole $15 a year sanction fee doesn't earn them an annual ring collection anymore. Now, This all sounds like a very odd opinion from a ball reviewer who has long promoted the complexity that the equipment meta lends to the game. But again, I talked about it. I think it's gone overboard. It's too complicated for people to grasp. Even people at the top levels of the game don't really understand it. Again, Pete Weber famously said he knows nothing about ball tech or layouts. He just throws them and knows what works, when it works, and how to use it, and he's obviously done that very effectively. I've been involved in many arguments with people who don't understand ball tech or cover tech, or when something is burning up versus when it's not hooking, why hook and response are two different things, lane conditions, all the way down to the basics of why lack of flare, not a urethane cover stock, is what causes carry down. I'm going to start getting back into more teaching stuff rather than just bowling balls ad nauseum. But the start of the year has been really rough, and I really didn't expect the whole Brunswick thing to happen in the first place. I thought I was going to like semi-retire, but they offered it to me, and I took it, and I've liked it so far. I like the equipment. I appreciate them reaching out, and hopefully you all have enjoyed it, being able to see more equipment too. But when we have such a problem in bowling that people can't even understand, that you tell them that urethane doesn't cause carry down, and it like melts their brain. It's like, if we can't understand that a cover stock does not cause carry down, then we have bigger problems. Because if and I'll get into this in the video about that, but I'm making a video that urethane does not cause carry down. Some urethane balls can cause carry down, like Purple Hammer, Black Hammer. But just because a ball has a urethane cover stock doesn't mean it's going to create carry down. Because a ball that flares, if the part of the ball with the oil on it never touches the lane again, how can it cause carry down? So an IQ 78 and a Black Hammer will cause carry down. The IQ 78 will not, because it flares. Now there's one small caveat, because bowling balls do have bow ties, which is where the oil rings cross on the top of the ball, on the bottom of the ball. And so that the bow tie does hit the lane again, but it's so much smaller of an amount. It's just tiny little, the less a ball flares, the longer the bow tie is. But balls that flare a lot, like a Black Widow urethane or a UC3 or something like that, those bow ties are so small that you're just getting little spotty nothings. They're not causing any more carry down. Like an IQ 78 will not cause any more carry down than an IQ Tour solid will cause, because they flare the same amount. And people will say, oh, but the absorption rates and whatever else. It's like, well, a bowling ball does not absorb oil in the millisecond between one rotation and the other. Otherwise, if they absorbed oil that fast, then there wouldn't be any oil on the ball when it came back in the return. Like, if we can't even get the basics of that down, what hope do we have for people for the majority to ever understand the bowling ball technology to take advantage of in the first place? So while I understand, I like the complexity that it adds to the game, it's a little too far. So furthermore, this is another thing. You're not going to get casual viewers from something that's as complicated or confusing as bowling is without leaning further into the WWE style of showmanship, which is something that the core dedicated bowling viewer isn't into. There's a lot, like I like seeing people getting excited while bowling and slapping stuff off and getting the crowd pumped up and whatever else, but there's a lot of people that don't like that. The majority of the bowling viewership, I think, does not like that. And so that's just another thing that they're trying to get the youth into, because the youth are not necessarily going to be attracted to something that's not exciting. And so they're kind of moving on. The industry as a whole is kind of moving on from the boomers. And I don't mind it. I don't mind getting people hyped and excited and whatever else, but I also completely understand the people that aren't into it. It's like, well, I want to watch bowling. I want to watch something like golf, where the golfers, you get a fist pump and you have some Tiger Woods excitement every once in a while, but it's not the WWE style jumping all over the place and being a caricature and whatever else. Now, going back to cornhole, I've been attracted to it more and more because of the simplicity Again, I thought it was kind of a backyard drinking game myself, and the idea of professional cornhole seemed pretty laughable. However, I have a viewer whose daughter is a pro. Miranda Coy is a pro cornhole player, and I think she won something. Her and her partner won a doubles tournament a week or two ago, and she's really good, and it's really cool to watch. But so professional tournaments are showing up more on TV. So being the devil's advocate I am, I had to turn it on to see the professional cornhole tournaments. The charm of the game is in its simplicity, how seemingly simple and mindless it is to just throw a bag through a hole on a board, but how exceptionally complicated that makes being proficient at the game. It applies constant pressure and demands you to be extremely consistent, and when you aren't, it can also fall apart as quickly as a hole of golf if your first shot gets you into trouble. At the same time, it's not so complicated and involved that it forces you to spend a ton of money to understand a myriad of boards and bags and associated rules. It's virtually the same game at the professional level It's virtually the same game at the professional level that it is in your backyard. You can both enjoy it as a hobby or party game and take it more seriously without a significant financial commitment. The charm of bowling, too, was in its simplicity. You roll a ball down a lane, you knock some weird-looking sticks over. Equipment and lane conditions haven't enhanced that. They've significantly overcomplicated it and bogged it down to the point where the barrier to entry is exceptionally high. Nothing this complicated and this expensive will succeed in today's day and age. That's why bowling's version of Topgolf, which is Bolero, will continue to succeed, while competitive bowling, if due to nothing else but the price tag, will continue to falter. At the very least, bowling needs to raise standards for what's considered valid or sanctioned play. You can leave the recreation alone. You can put out easier conditions, let them use reactive equipment, let it be fun for the casual person who doesn't want to beat their head against the wall every weekend league. It's perfectly fine. No one will ever get into bowling if there's not a shallow end of the pool to dip their toes into. However, there have to be some higher standards. You can't try to integrate the most basic recreational level of the game with something like the USBC Open Championships. That's just wild to me. Now, what bowling truly needs, I don't think is realistic. There's no scenarios where reactive balls get banned, manufacturers close or significantly shrink, and bowling as a whole goes to a team masters level of play. However, what is realistic is a restructuring of how it currently operates. Let me check comments here. See how many people I'm pissing off. Yeah, sandbaggers are a symptom of everybody wanting handicap. And this is the other thing, is it's so, a lot of people think it's so expensive and complicated. It's like, it requires too much to be even kind of a mediocre bowler. It just, if you want to consistently be at a higher scratch level and make money at tournaments and whatever, it's so much more difficult than it's worth, basically. You have to spend so much more time and invest so much more in practice and equipment and whatever else to get to the point where you're succeeding more often at these tournaments. It's so much easier to just do a little bit of sandbagging or just, stay in that nice little range where you get plenty of handicap and then just show up at tournaments and kind of screw around at league. Yeah, the cost is the worst part of the sport for me. Tournaments and stuff are so expensive, even at the youth level. Equipment doesn't help with making it more accessible. And that's the thing, is they talk about making it more accessible, but it costs thousands of dollars a year to just generally participate in bowling. If you just bowl leagues and you want to go bowl, again, like we bowl Tulsa, we bowl Ozarks, Southwest, stuff like that, it's several $1,000s a year just to participate in regular leagues and go to a few regular tournaments a year. And more people just do not have that kind of money. Meanwhile, we've got a really nice set of cornhole boards and a nice set of bags. And there's a whole lot of other, and I'm picking on cornhole because it's kind of my latest thing. But you can have, if you want to play darts, if you want to play pool, it's really expensive to own your own pool table, but it's not really expensive to go out and practice pool. And that's the difference, is even for some of this stuff that you're not necessarily going to own your own equipment or whatever, a lot of this stuff is something like it's really not even that expensive to go practice golf. Like you can get a mat and you can get wiffle balls and practice in your backyard, or you can go hit a bucket of balls for $5 to $7 or whatever. You will be tired and done practicing inside of a couple buckets. By the time you hit if you get a couple of, jumbo buckets of golf balls for $10 a piece, you say you spend, $20 hitting 150 golf balls, you're going to be worn out by that 150th golf. You're going to be worn out by the end of the first bucket, let alone the second bucket. And again, there's a lot of things that you can do to practice bowling in your house too, but it's not nearly as effective. And even, yes, you can get a mat and you can put it in your backyard and you can hit wiffle balls and whatever else with golf, and that's not as nearly as helpful. But you've also got, if you go hit a bucket of balls, let's just say that you get a jumbo bucket of balls for $10, you can go hit balls and then go over to the practice green and chip and putt and whatever else, and that doesn't cost anything, especially if you buy a bucket of balls. And so you can go practice golf for hours for a whole lot cheaper than you can do it for bowling. Yeah, I don't think you can say urethane don't cause carry down, especially when everyone hears urethane. They think purple cause carry down, higher flare. Urethane doesn't carry down fine. Yeah, it's one of those things, and I will, it's a sticking point for me that if somebody, I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, well, that's one of those things that we should just let go. Like, just let people believe that urethane causes carry down, that's fine. It's like, well, it's fundamentally incorrect. And if they base their understanding off something that's fundamentally incorrect, then we have a problem there. I was trading some comments back and forth with somebody the other day on Facebook that said that, he doesn't understand why people get oil extractions, because all you have to do is resurface a ball and it takes all the oil with it. And I said, he's like, well, I've done that before. I've resurfaced a ball and then I've had, I've done an oil extraction, just hadn't taken anything out. And so, resurfaces just take care of the oil. They take the oil out of the ball. And I'm like, no, that's not the way that it works. The whole point of a ball absorbing oil is to pull it away from the coverage. When you resurface a ball, you're taking off such a microscopically small amount of the ball when you resurface that all the oil that gets soaked up in the ball isn't going to reside in that, that millimeter or less, that, ridiculously small amount. All the oil doesn't live in there. It lives throughout the entire cover stock, because bowling balls are designed to pull the oil into the ball to keep the top of the cover stock fresh so that it continue to grip, instead of like urethane that doesn't absorb oil. And so the oil just kind of sits on the top of the ball. But reactive balls are designed to absorb the oil. And so you can't resurface a ball unless you just grind the living crap out of it, unless you take a freaking 1/4 inch out, and that's not even going to do it either. The point is that oil extractions take oil out of the ball. You can't resurface the ball and take the oil out of the ball. Otherwise, before oil extraction was a thing, a ball would die, you'd resurface it, it'd be fine for a game and a half, and then all of a sudden it'd be skating again, because the oil needs to come out of the ball, because resurfacing doesn't take oil out of the ball. And he kept arguing with me, and so I just left it and moved on. So if you can't get some of the very basic things like that down, then it just skews your entire perception or understanding of the game, beyond that. Yep, not a fan of the chanting. Andrew makes a good point. It's like, I think bringing the ruckus and rowdiness is imperative to any sporting event. It is to a certain extent. It depends on the sport, I think. It doesn't really work in something like golf. I don't think like people cheer and people, golf's more exciting than it used to be. It's more than the golf claps and whatever. And yeah, and so I do partially agree with Andrew. I also partially agree with James. When it's organic, yeah, when it's in, oh gosh, I can't even think of the bowling alley here at the Portland.
I just say Portland, everybody knows.
Bayside Bowl. When it's Bayside, Bayside's electric. But when it was the chanting like it was at the PBA playoffs, that was stupid. Stupid.
Your height.
Brunswick, yeah.
No, God. I'm being hammered up first.
Yeah, you get a golf sim. I wonder how much a golf simulator would cost, because that would be amazing. You can't have a bowling simulator. We put a cap on our handicap. We voted on it before league started, and I said, if you don't vote yes on a handicap cap, you're a sandbagger. And everyone raised their hand. Now it's competitive. Wait until Storm's chemists get a hold of the cornhole game. Yep, they remember they're not a bowling company. They're an innovation company that just happens to make bowling balls. Cornhole bag 6 ways. No, come on. Oh, okay. All right. So, again, what is realistic is a restructuring of how bowling currently operates. I still don't think that solves the true problem, though. I think it's yet another Band-Aid or another form of life support to try to milk a dying sport that has no long-term chance of survival as it currently operates. It would at least legitimize and add clarity and distinction to the competitive side of the game, but it doesn't take a professional to look at the current business model and see the writing on the wall. Competitive bowling is expensive, it's frustrating, it's overfull of the kind of people that enjoy drama, toxicity, and negativity. I'm tired of arguing with them, I'm tired of fighting them, and I have zero love left for the game. While I wouldn't change a thing because of what I've learned and gained, however much I paid for it, I certainly don't want to invest any more of my life bailing water out of the Titanic. I'd rather just jump and get it over with. Like the guy in the movie that just, it's going up and the guy jumps off and he smacks a few railings on the way down and then just splashes. Just do that and get it over with. So that's my article. I was like 10 minutes behind the stream commenting on stuff. So yeah, this is one of those things that I don't see a way out, basically, because what I think is going to fix the game would also instantly kill it. I just don't think it can get this swollen, because it's a very equipment heavy game now, which again, I like the meta game up here that it kind of adds to it, because you have to know the more that you know, the more that you understand, the more that you pay attention. It can be just as much or more mental than it is physical. You don't have to be, because I always used to think it was, when I was younger and I could hook the ball more than, I had a pretty high rev rate, or I didn't throw it very hard, but my rev rate was 425, 450-ish. So it was kind of up there, right-handed. And it always drove me nuts that the older bowlers, the 40 and 50-year-olds that kind of just, plunked it down the side, just kept hitting the pocket and kept hitting the pocket and kept hitting the pocket. And it just always pissed me off. But it was, it didn't really take, it just took know-how. So even though I could physically throw the ball a whole lot better than they could, they knew how to get the pin. They just knew how to knock the pins down. And so I think that it's great from a certain perspective. But if you kind of stripped all the stuff away, you made it super cheap again. You made it a whole lot more accessible. If it wasn't so complicated, I think that there was a lot more people that get into it. You'd still have a whole lot of parity between the better bowlers and the worst bowlers, because now you're not going to have The better bowlers aren't going to have the equipment helping to inflate the scores. They're not going to be able to manipulate the conditions as much. They're going to have to just kind of shoe up and make shots. But at the same time, the lower average bowlers aren't going to have all that help on their end either. And so when you go back to having just skill being the difference between, because I've seen some people, you cannot, in any other sport, you cannot take a piece of equipment and make someone significantly better like you can with bowling. Like there's some people that if you just, they don't have anything going on, if you just get them into the right bowling ball, their average can go up 20 pins. There's just nothing like that exists in any other sport. It just, I think it's just too, everything has gotten too far out of control. I think some reactive stuff is a good thing, but I think if you just kind of went back to basics and made it a simpler game, it pulls everything else back in. Like I was talking about in that section, where if you get rid of reactive balls, even if the conditions are easy, because this is what happened with short oil back in the 60s or 70s or whenever that happened, there was a bunch of scores back then because they were still kind of walled up conditions. The bowling balls weren't as dynamic, but you can still, if you have, we had a plastic bowl tournament one time, and there were still people putting up some scores because it was like 15 mils of oil, and there was still a nice ratio. And so if you can get plastic balls to hook, you can still score pretty good. I mean, that's why people score well with urethane, even though urethane is, outdated technology. People can still score really, really well with it, given the right circumstances, given the easier conditions. So it's still something that can happen, that can be taken advantage of. And I think bowlers are so good now that even if you went back to plastic, urethane, light oil conditions, even if you made the conditions fairly easy on the ratio, you're still going to see people averaging 230 and 240. I would absolutely believe that. It's just not going to give so much free success to so many people. So I think that the simpler you make the game, the more parity you're actually going to see, but you're not going to see the super wide range of all kinds of this crap that happens. You're not going to see 30 mil patterns that get absolutely destroyed by reactive balls and surface, and that make, again, who you follow, who you bowl with, whatever else. It's not going to, sandbagging is going to be kept to a minimum. You're not going to have the urethane complaint. I was following somebody throwing urethane. You're not going to have the lefty just ran them over, because you're not going to have that gigantic difference between all of these different factors anymore. All right. Technology is ruining the sport. My granddad 25 years ago, guess they were right. So to wrap this up without rambling on even more, digging myself a deeper hole. I've said this before, but I think competitive bowling has 10 to 15 years left. Because the membership numbers continue to go down. I don't think that the youth movement is going to contribute, because the youth are huge right now. And the youth have been huge for the last 5 years. I mean, the youth scene has been amazing for 5 solid years, and USBC membership numbers continue to drop. I think that the PBA is in a whole lot better shape than they used to be. There's some good things that have happened professionally. The PWBA is not, USBC is just not doing what they should be doing with that, because they're down to nothing. They're down to a couple months in the summer now. So the PWBA, I think, is being mishandled. I wish the PBA would buy them. I don't think it's going to happen, but I wish that would happen, because the women deserve better than what they're getting currently. But the youth movement is not translating into more USBC members. Bowling balls are continuing to come out faster and faster. I think to the point where now people are actually, and I've seen it in my viewership numbers, and that's what used to be really weird is that it always used, people would ask for, it's like, okay, can ball reviews are nice. Can we have more instructional stuff? Can we help me figure out how to use them? Or I want to know more about building arsenals or bowling on certain conditions or whatever else. And so then bowling reviews are fairly easy to make. The instructional stuff gets really complicated, and some stuff doesn't translate well on video, and other things are complicated. It takes a whole lot longer to explain, and trying to find enough stuff to put on the screen to keep people involved while you're talking for 20 minutes on something can be really difficult. So putting together those instructional videos are a whole lot more difficult than putting together a ball review. But so I'd put all the extra effort in and get one of those up, and then nobody would watch it. So I'm like, okay, so everybody wants something other than ball reviews, but then they don't watch it. However, it's kind of flipped now. I know a lot of people, Darren Tang said the same thing. He's like, yeah, ball reviews just don't really get views anymore. The stuff that people want to see are the fun stuff, the competitions, any kind of instructional videos, whatever else. That's the stuff that's really blowing up and getting crazy now. And so I think it's really interesting to see how fast that flipped to where people don't really, the bowling balls are kind of like, they're coming out so fast that people just don't even really care about them anymore. But the problem is going to is that there's so much, there's no other sport that's this equipment heavy or this equipment dominated. Racing, you could say racing. That would be totally, racing is the craziest, most equipment heavy game out there is. But you don't have any other sport where equipment is this dominant. So it's very complicated, it's cost prohibitive. There's gatekeepers. Bowlers are toxic. They don't make people want to bowl. They make people want to quit bowling or not even start bowling. And again, everybody at the higher levels of the sport think that they're running frickin' Apple or Microsoft or something. They're curing cancer making bowling balls. So, oh, good Lord. All right. Rusty with the C note here. Get yourself another Johnny Walker pack. Rusty, I really appreciate this. This is wild. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I appreciated the discourse and the debate, because that's the thing is I don't think I'm right about all of this stuff. I might be wrong about half of it or more than half of it. But when somebody like you is willing to have a conversation, that's what the whole thing is about. And again, we may not see eye to eye on several things, and I may feel differently about certain things than you do, but you've been respectful and have offered realistic points that made me think, or that made me maybe change my perspective, or say, you know what, something like golf is really expensive too, and somehow it's doing just fine. So what's the problem with bowling? So then you create another rabbit trail. It's like, oh, okay, well, now that I see the different perspective, now we have to go chase this sucker and see where this ends up. So thank you very much. That's really appreciated. It's very cool. I have about half my bottle of Johnny Walker Blue left. So I kind of,
after I hid it from you for like 6 months.
Yeah. I very slowly, but I figured tonight's topic deserved some top shelf. So unless anybody has anything else, we're going to let this thing percolate up here, because Mr. Rusty deserves some screen time for this very, very generous gift. People have been saying technology will be our doom and young people don't want to work for over 100 years. Lame arguments every time. Yeah, Chad's attitude towards the women is you're lucky you even have a tour. I think that the women could be successful if the PBA bought it. If the PBA ran the PWBA, I think that they'd be okay. Because the PWBA is one of those things where it's a little bit closer to tennis or golf, where there's not the difference. There's not such the difference in physicality like there is in basketball or like there is in something like baseball or football or whatever else. It's much more about the technique of the thing. And so that's why you have had women that have won PBA tournaments, because it's much more about accuracy, getting the pins down. It's not so reliant on, a physical presence. So where do we start? Actually, I'll just read this comment. I'll leave this up here for Rusty. So where do we start? There's hundreds of us in here, and there's thousands out there contributing to the problems. What do we do first? And this is another thing, is I think that the youth are going the right direction. So if the youth are out there bowling on tougher conditions, the Storm Youth Championships, Junior Gold, Teen Masters, whatever else, if they're bowling on tougher conditions, and by and large, you have a lot of them on tough conditions, urethane is the easy button for a lot of conditions. So they're already used to bowling with old technology. So you can have all the reactive balls out there and whatever. But you've got a lot of them using urethane and plastic already. And then you have something like the Teen Masters that I think is the perfect scenario. But I don't know. I think it's one of those things. If you want to succeed in bowling right now, outside of certain reactive bowling balls have to be a part of that. And you have to have a lot of them. Like I'm going through the process of narrowing. And again, I'm left-handed now, and so it's a totally different story working through equipment. Packing nationals bags is really easy. It's a bunch of urethane and a couple reactive balls. But if I was right-handed and going, I'd be taking 8 to 11 bowling balls probably, and just swapping. I'd be taking 8 into one event and 8 into another event, and just swapping out 3, or just taking a different 3 into whatever else. You just have to have the equipment to compete if you want to truly compete at bowling. Now, in a league setting, the difference between having a bunch of bowling balls and not is probably 10 pins. Like if I'm going to see this year, because I'm going to take one ball on Fridays. I want to see what the real difference is between, I'm going to take one ball. I'm going to take a strike ball and a spare ball 2 Friday nights this year. And I'm going to see what the difference is between that and actually taking 6 balls to my competitive league and trying to score in that. I'm going to see what the real disparity is. And I have I was going to throw the black hammer this year, but it's on a house. If it was a little different shot, like trying to throw a black hammer on a house shot is going to be a little too weird. I think that's going to be kind of beyond the pale. And not really get the direction that I was going to get. And so what I think I'm going to do is, on my Friday night league, is I am going to pick one ball out of our stash that's older, that needs to be drilled, that needs to get thrown, whatever else. So the ball of the year for Friday nights is a halo burn. So I am going to drill my halo burn, and my black hammer is going to be my spare ball. But the halo burn is going to be the only ball that I'm going to throw on, barring something happening to it.
I think you want to do 2, just because you need more to drill more.
Well,
half and half.
Yeah, I might drill one for the first half of the year and one for. But the point is I'm going to use the same ball, or I'm going to use one strike ball. The entire. I'm not going to take multiple balls so that I can adjust to different whatever. I'm going to take one ball and a spare ball and make it work. And even better if it's just one single ball that I can throw the entire year, just to see what the ultimate difference is. I think it's going to be about 10 pins, probably. I think that in my scratch league, if I average 225 in my scratch league, I'm going to average 215 with the one single ball. And so that would be a step in the right direction, is just governing yourselves as bowlers like in league, and especially, again, I asked one time, I'm like, I would really love to be able to switch hands or interchange hands, because I would love to shoot spares right-handed. That is the one thing that still gets me sometimes on the left side of the lane. I would just, I can be left-handed, but if I could pick up spares right-handed, that would be amazing. But they said that, well, that's a way that you could legally sandbag, because you could still, if somebody averaged 220 with their right hand and 170 with their left hand, and you allowed them to interchange, they could be performing to the best of their ability with their lower average hand, but they could legally sandbag doing that, because you could say, well, I averaged 170 lefty and I decided to bowl this week lefty, and so I shot 500 instead of 670, and oh, oops, that dropped my average. That's too bad. I guess that I'll just, bowl left-handed in league and then bowl right-handed in tournaments when I get all this handicap and whatever. And I'm like, it sucks, but I get it. I could just, if you're ambidextrous, then you're just going to be scratch. That would be really easy to do, but they didn't want to do that. But the other thing is that you can sandbag however you want to sandbag. You could decide that you want to throw a backup ball, or you could decide that you just want to throw a plastic ball in league, and you could be bowling to the best of your ability, and you could average 190 with a plastic ball, but then go bowl tournaments with reactive stuff and average 220, 230, 240. You can legally sandbag doing the same thing too. So I think it's up to people to govern themselves a little bit better. Unless you're bowling a lot of tournaments or whatever, you just don't need to buy 5-6 bowling balls a year. Just buy one ball a year, take it to all your leagues, and only change it, adjust it if the performance significantly drops off or whatever else. Just don't feed the machine any more than you have to. And again, you pick one ball and you average 10 or 15 pins lower, and it may not be as exciting, averaging 205 or 210. I mean, you want to feel, when you're doing something like that, you want to feel like you're competing to the best of your ability, which involves playing the equipment game, but you don't have to, because your average in a league is not really that important. Oh, yeah, Justin, we're not even going to open that can of worms. Yeah. Yup. Moving on. Yeah, it's bowling. I don't think people inside bowling understand how dorky it is. Yeah, it's one of those things where people just, again, people in the bowling industry think that they're curing cancer, they're so special, or they're so evolved and whatever else. It's like, man, it's the bowling industry. Yeah, so what you gonna do? Quit bowling? I mean, ultimately, that's the thing. If you're not happy, then you're not happy. Shouldn't stick with something that doesn't enhance your life. And that's the thing, is for most people, I'm gonna say that's the truth. I think it's, and yeah, I wouldn't really say that bowling enhances my life, but I would hope that it has enhanced several other people's lives through, the stuff that we've done. And I would have to say that it has, because it's not bowling specifically, the people, the situations it's created, whatever else, but the bowling specifically, I really don't have any real desire to continue to do it outside of bowling tournaments with the Discord group, or outside of doing stuff with the Discord group and all the people and all the everything. Bowling, just actually participating in bowling, doesn't do anything for me anymore. I'm just not interested. I will continue to do it, but F in the chat. And this is the thing. I really believe that bowling is one of, if not the most accessible sports out there. Anyone can bowl, and if there's a culture shift, I think it can become even bigger. Yeah, that's the thing, is that bowling, again, the design is so great. You can do it rain or shine, snow, heat, whatever else. It's indoors. And if it just wasn't so freaking expensive, all kinds of people, that's why it was so popular way back in the day. Because it was cheap, it was simple. You can play it year round, any time of the day, whatever else. You don't need to, golf is very weather dependent. You don't have to, bowling 24/7. You don't have to worry about it. And it doesn't require, and again, it doesn't require any significant physical whatever else. There's people that bowl in wheelchairs too. So, I mean, it's so accessible. It could be so accessible to so many more people, but outside of just doing very basic things in league, it's super expensive. It's super involved. The learning curve is ridiculous, and there's just nothing that really there's no real payoff. So, all right. I think once again, thank you very much to Rusty for the very generous donation. I will invest it wisely.
Get it when we get back from Vegas.
Yeah, or no, I can, because Vegas always has that little shop where I got the buck sauce. You're not helping.
He's done.
Where I got the Ghostwood, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
No,
they've already got.
there.
Yeah, I'll
That's
share
right.
that with you too, because there's always some very interesting things in the South Point gift shop. At the very bottom of the escalator to where you go up to the center in South Point, there's a gift shop across the way, and they've got great stuff, and it's all super cheap too. So
I know.
I will invest that wisely here in a couple weeks. But yes, what about Jim's older reactive balls continuing to cure as they sit for years? Had a homie drill an original Black Widow as a mega turret. Yes, this is actually a thing. Matt Gasson, who has a new pro shop, put something out about this. And bowling balls are like concrete. They never stop curing.
Yeah.
So that's why stuff that sounds stupid, like the innovative plastic or the immortalizer, whatever the crap it's called, the plastic bag that you put the balls in that everybody thinks is stupid, it's actually a thing, because that slows down the curing of the bowling ball, which literally makes the bowling ball last longer, because they do continue to cure. They get harder, they shrink, which makes them more susceptible to cracking. And the harder they get, the less reactive they're going to be. And so, yes, bowling balls, as they get older, it is a thing. So that's why it's best to leave them in their bags, in the boxes, if you're not going to use them, or buy the immortalizer things, because they actually do what they're supposed to do. It's not a scam. It's actually a real thing. So that is actually legit. This is another thing. You once made a comment about people who bring 6 balls to league because they like to keep the game interactive. I agree with this 100%. Yeah, and that's if you're bowling the same leagues in the same center with the same people 9 months out of the year, and even some summer leagues. The only thing to make it a little bit more interesting is to have different bowling balls. That adds a little bit of a spark, or that adds something. Hey, I got a new bowling ball. It's something like, oh, I bought a new driver, or I got a new this or that or whatever, some new golf toy or playing. But at least with golf, you have different holes, you have different courses and whatever else. A bowling alley is a bowling alley, and you have limited different courses. It's just throwing a ball down, laying at some pins, and you can make it. That's one good point about, for the regular league crowd, equipment spices it up a little bit. It makes it a little bit more interesting. So, yep, I just got into bowling, but it may be short-lived. I spent a ton in the 2 years so far. I would love to do tournaments, but I can't afford it, and practicing at $7 to $15 a game at Bolero's is unsustainable. Yeah, it's just one of those things that, if you do, bowling is going to be expensive no matter what. Even if you just do buy a couple balls and you just practice until you get good enough to start expanding and buying a bunch of stuff. But you kind of have to buy a bunch of stuff to kind of get there and be competitive and to understand what you're going to be buying in the first place. It's like one of those things where people say, well, I'm not good enough to go bowl tournaments. It's like, no, you have to go bowl the tournaments to get the experience under your belt, so that when you are good enough, then you can take advantage of it. If you wait until you feel like you're good enough to go bowl tournaments, then you have to start all the way back at the bottom with experience and figuring these things out and whatever else. So no, you need to bowl tournaments to get the experience to help you figure out what you need to work on. And so when your skills are there, your mental is also going to be there and ready, and you know the whole drill in the first place. So yeah, it's just one of those tough things. So, all right. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Rusty, thanks again. Coming in clutch.
Whatever you buy, you can't drink it until the next S.O.B.cast, so you can shut off.
Yeah.
So you'll have to do it again.
Yeah, I will. Whatever I get, I'll drink on the next S.O.B.cast. So, thanks everybody for hanging out again. You know, I don't. This is my perspective. I don't know everything. I may not know a whole lot of anything. I might just be an idiot sitting here rambling at a camera. But I think it's also fairly obvious to see that bowling's got problems and it needs solutions, and I just don't see the solutions coming with the current state of things. I just think it's got, the problems are too big to, they're just eventually going to catch up with it. So thanks everybody for hanging out. Appreciate this. We'll do this next time. I am going to have I think I'm going to do some live classroom stuff, because trying to put videos together has been, I've got several videos written, but trying to figure out what I'm going to put on the screen. And some of these are going to be like 15, 20 minute long videos just to explain some fairly simple things. And so I'm probably just going to do live streams so I can talk to everybody. And I'm sure that that's not going to be as interesting. You know, people want more digestible videos, but if you want to learn something or not? So I'm just going to do live streams, and whatever kind of views or attention or whatever it gets is what it gets. So thanks everybody for hanging out. I'm going to go take a nap. We will see you next time. Thanks for watching.